Well, I hit the wrong one on Spreaker, but that's okay. Didn't want to be late on that anyways. So we'll go like this. Put that there. Hey, everybody on YouTube, what is going on? We are live and ready for another great show tonight as we are one step away from the weekend. And if you're over in Australia like our guest is, it is the weekend. Here we go. It's party time. And Paul Anthony Wallis is our guest. We're getting into everything from mysticism to spirituality to ancient codes, ancient aliens. You know, he's going to bring some aliens with him. I could feel it. We're going to get some aliens tonight. And he's rocking a nice, tight mustache and beard combination. We should get that out of the way right then and there. And I'm not going to lie. I wish you could see his shirt, YouTube, because I want that shirt. I want that shirt. It is awesome. Absolutely awesome. But let's give a quick shout out to everyone who is here. And if you are new to our channel, we always like to tell people that this is, even though we are live on YouTube, this isn't a podcast. This is actually a live radio show. So at the bottom and top of the hour, we will go to commercial breaks. You'll be able to hear us talking during the breaks, but I just don't want you to be caught off guard. Like, what the hell is this? Why is this podcast going to a commercial break? That's because we're a radio show that is moonlighting on YouTube. Let's give a rundown of everyone in our chat room so far. Mike L. in the gold position. James in silver, race fan in bronze. The Ronald Penton, how you doing, man? Gorgeous Renee, how you doing? Josh, or make that Joseph. Daniel Pena, otherwise Persevere, how you doing, man? Gorgeous Tammy and Sassy Sandra, good to see you. Hello, Squirrely Susie, how are you? Bee's Nest, thanks for coming on in. John Swan, always a pleasure to have you here. Chris Jarvis and Jen A, we love you guys. Thank you for joining us. Brian and Superquest, thank you for coming on in. Rock the Gaspar, how you doing, man? NP Woo, good to have you here. NP Woo. Gorgeous Becky Belling is here, everyone. Make sure you give her a wave. Howard, what's up, man? Thank you for joining us. Project Blue Book, good to see you. The gorgeous and talented Kira will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the right of the studio if you don't mind. Ghost 66 will be signing autographs on the left of the studio, so make sure you say hi to Ghost as well. Moving on here, Middle Child, where you been hiding lately? Good to see you. Chill Farm, welcome to our show. And Dale Tron, how you doing? Thank you for joining us. It looks like San Diego you're from. King of Kvist, you must be from Sweden. How are you? Thank you for joining us. The Jim Christie is here, everyone. The Jim Christie. Good to have you here, Jim. All right, where are we here? Because this problem with YouTube is the chat room skips. Otis, how you doing, man? Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Rich Hilke, good to see you again. Steve Stockton and Lord of Land and Justin Goodearth, good to have you here. Eric Files, how are you, Eric? Good to have you back. The gorgeous and talented Emily Bigelow, otherwise known, people, as Alaska's greatest athlete. There she is. Focus, how are you, man? My brother in Philadelphia, Eugene Braxton, I love you, man. Thank you for coming on in. Dirty Filth, good to see you. As we have Art de los Santos, it's always a pleasure to have you here. And where am I? It skipped again. There we go. And scrolling down, Richard Elmore, good to have you. Kevin's Beard. Hey, Kevin and Kevin's Beard, two separate entities from Texas. The Beard is keeping his entire family warm right now. I could tell. Yes, I could tell, buddy. How you doing, man? I hope you're doing okay. Devin, how are you? I think we're caught up as of right now. So we're going to get going in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And we're going to have a great show tonight. Remember, a great way to support this show is through the super chat, is through giving us a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if you're brand new to the channel, please do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. We are wanting 15,000 subscribers by May 24th. Why May 24th? Well, that's my birthday, and that's kind of what I want for my birthday from all of you. Hey, Theodora, how are you? Magnus Vermagnuson, good to have you here. And Kimberly, nice to see you. Michael Lestuka, good to have you here, man. Thank you for coming on in. Oh, that's a mouthful, man. That's an absolute mouthful. All right. Let's have some fun here tonight. Hi, gorgeous Marie, Princess Denali, the official princess. of Spaced Out Radio. Mary Bone. She's a vegetarian, Mary Bone, Mary Bone, Mary Bone. Lauren, you're looking lovely tonight. Thank you for joining us. We are going to rock this thing in exactly 20 seconds from now. Our guest tonight, Paul Anthony Wallis. And once again, nice beard and mustache combination from him, which means it's going to be a solid show tonight. And it is iced tea in my glass that I am drinking. 5 seconds. Let's have a great show tonight. Give us a thumbs up. Here we go. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, KPNL, and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Paul Anthony Wallis is a popular speaker around the world, researcher and author of books on spirituality and mysticism. His work probes world mythology and ancestral narratives for their insight into human origins and human potential. His book, Escaping from Eden, has been hailed by one of my favorite legends in radio, George Noory, as this generation's Chariots of the Gods. Paul hosts the Paul Wallis Channel on YouTube and co-hosts The Fifth Kind TV in partnership with GAIA, which everybody is very familiar with. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Paul Wallis, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
G'day, Dave. I'm fantastic, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
What's it like not having snow?
Well, I do love a little bit of snow every so often. My kids have never actually seen snow laying on the ground, so I think I'd love them to see that, but I quite like the climate out here, which is a little bit sunnier. It suits me. Keeps me happy.
You know what happens when it's sunny here? It's cold. It's really cold. Very cold. Last week when it was sunny, it was minus 35 Celsius. That's cold.
Wow. That is certainly cold. People say that Canberra is cold by Australian standards, but it's not that cold.
Well, we'll get into the meteorology later on in the show, because that's not really why we have you here, my friend. But I want to learn from you tonight, because I'm probably like a lot of our listeners, that we don't really look at the past towards our own experiences or how mankind or humankind, if you want to be politically correct, was kind of brought forward. There are so many different variations, from the religious connotations and creationism to everything that kind of falls in between. Are we made by aliens? Were we made by bugs? A Big Bang Theory? And, how did we advance in life? This is something that you have kind of forged around you in your life. How do you go from being just a normal guy into this world renaissance man of learning what we're all about?
Well, I don't know if I've ever been a normal guy as such. I guess growing up, I heard the stories everybody else hears with regard to who we are, where we're all from. So at a young age, I went to a Church of England school in the UK where I grew up, and you would hear the scientific explanation of who we are, that we are an evolved primate, and that every life form on the planet is the result of a gradual process of evolution from some primordial slime in the beginning. And as I listened to that explanation, I felt there was a gap in our ability to explain ourselves, because the only reason, Dave, that you and I are at the top of the tree on planet Earth is because of our higher intelligence and our technology. And I didn't really hear an explanation of how we got that, how we made this huge leap. Every other animal on planet Earth is really well adapted to the planet. I mean, they live out in the wild. If you or I were left out in the wild after 3 days, 3 nights, we'd be sick, hospitalized, or we may have passed away. So that's not very well adapted. We're absolutely dependent on this aspect we can't explain, our intelligence, our technology. And then being at a Church of England school, I heard the other story as well, that we're God's special creation. From out of nothing, he made us just as we are. And again, I felt that there was a laziness in that explanation. And so that was something that sat with me really from a very, very young age. And it was when I was 11 years old, I think it was, that I was introduced to the work of Erich von Däniken by my mum and dad. It was the subject of discussion at a dinner party. And I noticed that he had named this taboo. He had named this gap in our ability to explain ourselves, and was putting forward an idea that there was some kind of an intervention in our evolution as a species, an intervention from another intelligence from off planet. So it was at that young age that that idea was sown into my young mind. But it took a long time really for that to come back to center stage for me, because I was for 33 years involved in Christian ministry as a church doctor. I trained pastors. I was an archdeacon for the Anglican Church in Australia. And so a lot of my work and writing revolved around other things for a long time. But that idea, sown into my brain when I was 11, was gradually germinating, and I had to get back to it and just drill down into some of the questions that had not really been answered for me.
I can totally see that. But having such a strong religious background, how were you able to open up your mind enough from simple creationism and what the Bible teaches us?
Well, I think, like a lot of people who spend time with ancient texts, and for me it's predominantly the Bible, you do notice some very interesting moments, if I can put it that way, anomalies in the text, things that don't fit with our general story of things. And so if you're teaching from the Bible, you might say, oh, that I can't quite get my head around that. I wonder what's really happening there. I must get back to that sometime. But like everybody else, we're kept so busy that we never have the moment to get back to it and do the study and drill down into it. Fortunately for me, I've had such an interesting career that I have had gaps every so often to take time out and do study. And so some of these little red flags in the text of the Bible kept calling me back and saying, you need to look at this again. You need to look at this again. Because an anomaly, I mean, if you think about the progress of scientific knowledge, almost every time there's a scientific breakthrough. I mean, you think about Copernicus, or you think about the steam engine, or you think about relativity. It happens because somebody has noticed an anomaly, something that doesn't fit with the general story, and they give their time to that, and it turns out to be the portal to a whole new world. And that's how it was for me. When I finally had the time, in my book, Escaping from Eden, I talk about an ultimate Frisbee injury taking me out and giving me some time to draw aside, go back to those questions, look at the text again, and realize that there is a whole other story hidden in plain sight in ancient texts that I'd been familiar with for years. And then I realized that they paralleled in world mythologies and ancestral narratives all around the world. And they all told a very, very similar story, but one very different to the one I'd grown up with.
Okay, so in the Bible, when you look at some of these anomalies that you're talking about, can you give us an example of one? I think we can all find one, but I mean, the way we process it is completely different than maybe somebody who's scholarly around it.
Well, do you know, I think some of the most important anomalies are ones we would all spot it from a young child. And I think you've only got to sit down with a child and a child's Bible, and a child will point these anomalies out to you. So you go to the first book of the Bible, Genesis, go to the first chapter, and God says, "Let us make man in our image and likeness." And a child will say, "Who's us? Who's our? Why does it say that? Who's us? Why is it in the plural?" There's the first question. People who read it very attentively might notice that before any work of creation gets done, planet Earth already exists. So before let there be light, before sun, moon, stars, and all that, the whole story that we're familiar with, the planet is already described as being flooded and shrouded in darkness. Well, how can the Earth be there before the creation? A child might pick up on that even. And then you get to Adam and Eve, and apparently having a female of the species is an afterthought. Well, wouldn't that be rather obvious that Adam would need an Eve? And then we have the story of the fall in Genesis 3, the death penalty for eating a piece of fruit. Isn't that a bit harsh? And couldn't God see something was going to happen? And why did he make the snake in the first place? And then we get to Genesis 6, and we've got a global genocide. And you've got to explain to a child how a loving God can do a global genocide. And any preacher who preaches through those books will look at that and say, "Ooh, geez, I need to get my head around that sometime." And as I say, you just don't have the time when you're in the thick of work and ministry to get back to it. But those kind of moral questions are examples of anomalies. You get to Genesis 11, and we've got the human race bombed back into a pre-Stone Age state, apparently because we built a building that had infringed, building codes. Or it's very, very, very strange. You get further in, and you have stories where God seems to be doing weird things, making mistakes, failing to anticipate things a child could anticipate, and being very vindictive, unforgiving. And if you have a faith, then you might say, "Oh, I have a struggle with this, because how do I justify these behaviors?" And if you don't have a faith, you would think, "Well, that's not a God I'd want to get too close to. Thank you very much." So these are very serious questions, even though they're very obvious, even though they're the kind a child would point out. They are actually very significant questions which resolve the moment you do the translation work that I talk about in Escaping from Eden and the Scars of Eden. And that's one of the things that was a real light bulb to me, that when I went back and did this translation work, all those questions suddenly ironed themselves out, and I realized I'd been reading those stories completely wrong. And I say this because it's not out of any disrespect to those texts. It really is a matter of how we've translated them and understood them through the centuries.
Are you still a creationist?
Well, it depends what creationist means to you. When I talk about God, when I use the word God, I use it to mean the source of the cosmos and everything in it, which is the Apostle Paul's definition, as it happens. And it's Plato, one of my great heroes of historic philosophy. That's how he describes the God concept. So ultimately, everything comes from the source. So a yes to that question. But if you mean creationism in the fundamentalist sense, that I go to Genesis and read it as if I'm reading, diary entries of what happened, then no, I don't read it that way. I think if we read it more attentively and we notice that the planet was here before creation, and we notice the pluralization of certain words, there are things in the reading of the story that we might actually need to take more seriously. So when I say not in a fundamentalist way, it's not being loose with the text. It's reading the text more carefully and more accurately, and realizing that the process of the planet coming into being involves not just us, not just God, the source, but involves others as well. Our development as a species involves not just us, not just the source, but others as well, and involves interventions by visitors from another place, maybe another dimension, another planet. And that is the story that reveals itself in the Bible and in other texts when we drill down into the translation questions.
All right, this may be going completely off topic with where you wanted to go, but I kind of, the way I do things, I kind of react to the way you're answering the question. So I'm going to tell you, I have a complete phobia of dying, complete phobia. So my anxiety level right now literally is starting to shoot through the roof, and I love it because it's going to bring out some really good questions for you. But if this is the case, and let's say you're right on the translation of creationism, and if the planet was here, which would equate to what scientists believe, then who is God? What is God? How is God? Why is God?
Yeah, and how does that relate to your fear of death? All right, let me go somewhere really surprising. I'm going to go to Plato. And in my research for Escaping from Eden and the Scars of Eden, I rediscovered how important Plato is to the history of world thought, and certainly very important to the formation of Christianity. Even though he lived, 400 plus years before Jesus, his work was really vitally important. He's an absolute genius. And if you're not familiar with him, just to whet your appetite, if I tell you that Plato described with amazing accuracy what planet Earth looks like from a distance in the 5th century BCE, you should raise an eyebrow, because we didn't know what planet Earth looked like from a distance until the 1960s, when I think Apollo 8 turned around and took a famous photograph of the Earth in a bit of moon shadow, and I think it was called Earthrise. And for the first time, we realized that planet Earth doesn't look like a map of blue sea and gold land masses on it. It's actually a swirly pattern of white cloud and blue ocean and green, brown, gold land masses, and it's this swirly marble-like looking. That's exactly how Plato described it in the 5th century BCE. How could he possibly have known that? Well, he got his knowledge from some very interesting places. His method was incredibly scientific in some ways. A lot of it was just the application of logic to things we all observe. And where that took him was the conclusion that in the beginning was consciousness, that before the material universe existed, consciousness existed. Now, when I read that in Plato, my ears really pricked up, because that's what quantum research is suggesting today. Quantum scientists are beginning to believe that the prime organizing principle of the universe isn't time, as we thought in Newtonian physics, isn't light, as we thought after Einstein, but it's consciousness. Consciousness shapes the material universe, and Plato was there. So he believed that God, to use that language, the source, originally was a unified field of consciousness, intelligence, order, and then that exploded or fractalized into the material universe so that the consciousness could experience itself. Now, this is where you come in, Dave, because you are part of that explosion. You're part of that fractalization. You are a manifestation of the source, and so am I. And so Plato said, we exist as conscious beings before we become material beings. And our consciousness was part of the cosmic consciousness. Now, he argues this all one little step at a time through logic, and it's absolutely, you follow his logic, and you think, well, of course, that must be the case. Our consciousness must come from cosmic consciousness. And so he describes this journey. In the beginning is consciousness, then individual consciousnesses, then they become material beings, Dave Scott, Paul Wallis, and we have this material experience where we're supposed to learn something. And then at the end of this material life, we pass away and we become consciousness again, and we either go on to another experience or we return to this cosmic consciousness. Now, that pattern is really interesting because if anyone knows Joseph Campbell, they'll know that is the hero's journey. the hero's journey, where the hero begins in community and then goes out from the community and has all these experiences and learns this stuff and then returns to the community and enriches the community. That's the story of Dave Scott, the consciousness, the story of Paul Wallis, the consciousness. We're part of this cosmic learning. And what I find really comforting about that, coming back to your and my deaths, is that we are never separate from the source in that whole journey. We are all aspects of the universe experiencing itself. We're all aspects of the cosmic consciousness experiencing itself. We are all part of the learning experience. And then at some point we come back together and we pull what we've learned. It's a real mind-stretching concept, but the more I've thought about it and reflected on it, the more comfort I find in that. And I realize that the story of Jesus in the Gospels absolutely follows that same cycle. So if I can just quote a couple of texts for you. In the Gospel of John, we're told, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. So there's that. We're all part of the same consciousness. Then the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so we now have the material experience of life. We're learning some stuff. And then at the end of the Gospel, Jesus prays to the source, who he calls Father, and he says, now I'm returning to you back to the glory we enjoyed before the foundation of the world. Now, I believe that describes your journey, Dave, and my journey. We are all on this incredible learning experience. We're never separated from the source. We are never cut off from where we've come from. And I'm beginning to realize that the fear of separation is, and I don't want to offend anyone with a faith here, but the fear of separation has really been a driver in a lot of religious history in a really unhealthy way. And a lot of people listening will know that fear-driven religion is not a very nice thing to be a part of. And so that's a way in which my own faith has shifted, this greater appreciation of we are all one, we are all connected, we are all part of the cosmos, we are all on this journey together, and we're all finding out stuff together.
Does nothing for my anxiety. I'm going to be honest. Does absolutely nothing. No, but thank you for breaking it down, because this actually leads me to a question that I do want to ask you when we come back, because, I know you're not a guy who look, we're kind of going on a different tangent here than what we expected, but that's kind of what I like about this show is we have no agenda. You will see no questions prepared for you, because that's the way I kind of do things. But that does equate out to a major question about what you just said, and that is miracles, because a lot of people believe that they have religious miracles, and if there is no, say, divine religion or God per se, what are these miracles that are taking place, or these religious events, or these hallelujah moments that people have? I mean, we see it, all the time happening, whether it's statues that are crying out of nowhere and cannot be proven, or maybe somebody feels the hand of God on their shoulder as they, are having a down moment and maybe a very dark moment in their life. I mean, so it opens up a lot, and we only got about 20 seconds. So I do apologize. I want you to answer that fully before we get back, because I think it is relevant, and especially with where we are going on tonight's show. Paul Wallis is our guest, everybody. Paul Anthony Wallis. You can go to his website, which is paulanthonywallis.com, and you can check out one of his great books called Escaping from Eden. Get the book right there on the website. I'm looking at it right now. All you got to do is click on it and go for the sale. Just jump right in. That's all you need to do. Gorgeous cover, by the way. Running down a tunnel of light. Wow, it's deep. More Spaced Out Radio coming up right after this. All right, we're clear?
Awesome. Great question. I've got some great miracle stories, and it's really interesting because my belief in miracles has really expanded through the journey I've been on in writing these books.
Yeah, I've had a couple of real religious type experiences. And I'm not a guy who goes to church. I've always been a believer of God and everything. But to me, I think I've been able to segregate, or pardon me, not segregate, that's the wrong word, separate the religion from the spirituality of it,
Yeah,
in that personal relationship.
yeah,
And it's not something I talk a lot about in front of our audience because it's not my job to try and influence them one way or another. But I know for me, um, the two run-ins with the Angel of Death, the one run-in with when I was, oh goodness, this would have been about 1999. Yeah, 1999, 2000, where I was driving down a highway on Vancouver Island, and I just finished coaching a hockey game, and I had an absolute panic attack about death because I was a brand new father. Had an absolute
oh,
had an absolute panic attack about death because I told my daughter that I would be with her forever, and then it hit me that there's going to be one day where I'm not going to be there for her, and it dropped me. And I remember I was doing, speed limit was like 100 kilometers an hour. I was doing like 150, 160 down the highway. I didn't even realize it. And then all of a sudden, like I'm bawling my eyes out, man. And, screaming at God. And literally, like, there was this overpass, and I could see this light, street lamp off the overpass. And the biggest deer that I have ever seen was
oh,
standing right in the middle of the highway. And it was probably 600 yards away. And I'm doing 160. And all of a sudden, I felt this giant hand on my back. Giant hand. And the words came to me, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." And I slowed right down. That deer watched me until I came to a complete stop, and I was stopped for about I stopped about 7,500 yards from it. And literally I literally was bawling in my car, like, and it was weird because this is about 1:30 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody behind me on the highway, and there is nobody in the far lanes going the opposite direction. It is me, this deer, and this giant hand on my shoulder. It was profound, man. It was totally profound.
oh, that's an amazing experience. And I know so many people. It's so interesting. People share their stories with me every week. Some weeks it's every day, and the number of stories like that I've heard is just mind-boggling. And again, for me, it really emphasizes that we're not separated from this cosmic intelligence. That we are not living hidden, if I can put it that way. And that was a very loving experience
Yeah,
that you had there to understand your compassion as a father for your daughter. Wow,
yeah,
that's powerful.
yeah.
Yeah, I
I
totally
will say
relate to
this
that.
though. I will say this though. Channeling the angel of death will screw you up.
Yeah, that's not something I'd want to do.
Yeah, done that. December 13th, 2017. Or not
by
2017, 2011. December 13th, 2011.
by accident, I take it.
I actually saw the angel of death in my mother's eyes. And 2 hours later, 3 hours later, I sat down on my couch and not even knowing what channeling was, and I channeled him, and he told me how to keep my mom alive. 9 years later, my mom's still alive.
Whoa, that is very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, you've got something going.
Oh yeah, shit, dude. I'm a bag of woo. I am a big bag of
Yeah,
woo.
and it was all triggered by this one experience you had with your mom.
Yep. And that's where all of a sudden I jumped off the deep end. I had
Yeah.
no choice. I
Yeah.
probably did. I mean, it cost me all my friends. But
Oh, I can relate to that.
yeah.
I really
Hold
can.
on, my friend. Thank you, Awesome Cat Chaser, for that great super chat. It's a great way to support what we do. Don't forget, give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us on in, as we really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Paul Anthony Wallis. PaulAnthonyWallis.com, joining us all the way from the lovely country of Australia, part of the Commonwealth. So, we got some favors with him. And thank you so much, Paul, for coming on and doing Spaced Out Radio with us.
Oh, pleasure. It's great to be with you, Dave.
I want to ask you, right before the break, we were kind of getting into miracles, because if it's a source or a consciousness that is what is God, if that's what we could label it on a human term, how do these miracles happen? How do we all of a sudden see people who are at the brink of death, come back to life? People who claim to have had their judgment with Jesus and the devil and God himself. How do we explain, people who are absolutely destitute all of a sudden getting a helping hand because they never quit their faith in the darkest moments? People who died until they felt a hand of God on their shoulder or something along those lines. How do we equate that if there is no quote unquote God?
Well, my belief in God has certainly changed, so that now I conceive of God more as the source of the cosmos and everything in it. So my start point wouldn't be there is no God, but the work I've done in researching for escaping from Eden and the scars of Eden has really blown my worldview open. And I believe that miracles are far more prevalent than we generally believe, and they're not in any way confined to people with a faith or spirituality or religion or anything like this. I, for a long time, was involved in the world of ministry. And so I, from time to time, would see paranormal things in that context. So I would see miracles. I'd see remarkable healings that had no explanation, on a scientific basis. I'd have experiences of precognition or remote viewing or telepathic connection, all those kinds of things. And for a while, I thought that only happened to Christians, because that was the world I was moving in, and that this was, God's favor on his special people. And then as I started getting out a bit more, if I can put it that way, I realized that actually these kinds of experiences are experienced by every kind of person in the world, not just religious people, not just spiritual people. And then I started having experiences myself that did not fit in that religious paradigm at all. So I'll just give you a couple of for instances. I remember watching a training video. I was doing some work in real estate for a while, because ministry sometimes needs to be self-funded if you're planting churches, which I was. And so I was watching some training in real estate, and this guy, Chris Helder, came on, and he was speaking. I'd never seen him before, never heard of him. And here he is, a lovely guy, very inspirational guy. He's got this really weird Australian-American accent, and he's talking about how to sell real estate. And as soon as I started listening, I thought, your dad was a believer. He was a pastor. He was a senior pastor. He was an evangelist. And you loved him to bits. And I think he kind of hoped you were going to go into the ministry, but you are now actually in real estate. And I just knew it just like that. And I this sort of was in my mind for a few days, and I thought, well, what do I do with that? Why would that be relevant? Why would that come to me? And I just had to settle whether I'd got that right or not. So I contacted him, and I said, I think this is you. And so he phoned me, and he said, how did you know that? And I said, well, I don't know how I know it. It just came to my mind when I was watching you. And I couldn't think of a reason why that would have happened. It had nothing to do with ministry. It just seemed absolutely random. And then we were having our house painted. We were preparing to sell our house, go on the market. We needed the exterior painted. So it's another real estate story. I went to a real estate agent and I said, do you know anyone in town who does this kind of painting? And the realtor said, oh, actually, my husband, Keith, he does house painting. He could come and quote you for it if you'd be interested. Now, as she was speaking, into my mind came a very precise image of what her husband looked like. So much so that when he randomly drove down my street a few days later, I recognized him from what I'd seen in my mind's eye. A guy phoned me up wanting a gig at my church. He was a musician, and he wanted to come and visit my church and do his thing. A really interesting guy called Levi McGrath. Check him out. And as soon as he was talking to me on the phone, again, the image of his face came into my mind, so much so that when he randomly walked into a room a couple of weeks later, I recognized him from what I'd seen in my mind's eye. Now, after a few of these experiences, I realized these were nothing to do with ministry or God giving me information for some, kind of ministry reason. This was something, I was tuning into something else. And I began to realize that it had something to do with my brain, and that my brain was firing off in a way that was different to what I'd known before, but was very, very similar to what all kinds of people experience the world over. And it got me into a journey of discovery, of trying to work out, well, how is it happening? Why is it happening? And just to whet people's appetite for how I think it might work, you might remember, Dave, from the days of analog TV, that you could have a television in a house that didn't get very good reception off the aerial on the roof. But if you stood closer to the TV, all of a sudden you'd get a great signal. And that's because you are a better antenna for radio information than the engineered device on your roof. So the moment you begin getting your head around that, you realize that's very significant. That if we can pick up radio information, maybe we can pick up TV information. Maybe that's how we hear things and see things remotely, because your body has an electromagnetic field, the planet does. One way or another, these experiences are real that people are having. And I think it's because we are actually some kind of antenna, whether it's for light, radio, consciousness, however you want to think of it. But that's the beginning of an explanation I have for some of these miraculous experiences that we have that involve remote viewing, precognition, telepathic connection, and then that goes to other things as well.
Do you believe then that with the miracles that are happening, that there is some source setting this up, or maybe a reincarnated spirit that is waiting somewhere in the cosmos, waiting to come back? Is that possible, or is it a godly affair?
Well, I think there's a lot more going in the cosmos that you and I can see with our physical eyes. I mean, I have cats, and they can see things I can't see. So I believe that there may be other dimensional realities out there, people who have altered states of consciousness, who do tea ceremonies in the Amazon, that kind of thing. Very often they will describe experiencing other dimensional entities who seem very interested in us. So I think that may be part of the story. I do believe that human consciousnesses are around us as well. Some people have a very vivid sense, in some cultures, a very vivid sense of being surrounded by ancestors. There's an amazing verse in the Bible that talks about us being surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And I believe that can be part of the story as well. And I've had a few experiences where I'm beginning to think I've actually got a benevolent team around me, helping me in a way that I don't see, that I'm not fully aware of. But these moments have happened from time to time. I know they have for you as well, Dave, where one of my team members suddenly shows up in a moment where it's desperately needed and either stops that accident from happening, saves me from that person, or just says, look at this, and helps me to see something I need to see. So I think there's all that going on around us, and different ones of us are tuned into different aspects of that.
Interesting. Okay, so there's always an extraterrestrial example for all of this. You know, for some reason, the aliens have their fingers on everything. They got the pulse of what's going on here. Is it a matter that we are a new species that is trying to enter that galactic federation, as we've heard a month ago, or have we been manipulated by some extraterrestrial presence over the millennia that humankind has started to evolve?
Well, look, let me start at both ends of that question, because when you're talking about Haim Eshed, the former chief of Israeli space security, came out and said that on the basis of his 27 years in that position, he's concluded there's an intergalactic federation that's chosen not to self-disclose because we're not quite ready for it. Well, what he said may have shocked a lot of people who are paying attention, but when I read world mythology and ancestral narratives, that's exactly what they say. And when you translate the Bible in the ways I suggest in the Scars of Eden and Escaping from Eden, that's the picture that emerges, that there is this population of ET demographics surrounding planet Earth, apparently all fitting they've got some stakeholding in Project Earth and Project Humanity. So what Haim Eshed is saying has been said for thousands of years. And if you go back and listen to some of these ancestral narratives, which I do, particularly in The Scars of Eden, the story they tell is of life evolving on planet Earth, and then there being a number of visits and interventions by some of our cosmic family. And you might say, cosmic family? Who were they exactly? Well, if there's one source and we're in a populated universe, I lean towards a theory that's called panspermia. And panspermia is a view held by very eminent DNA scientists. Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of the double helix of DNA, believed this. Carl Sagan wrote about this in the 1960s. Maxim Makukov, one of the top world experts in DNA and genetic coding, they hold to the view that the coding for biological intelligent life has actually been disseminated throughout the cosmos, and that whenever it lands on a hospitable planet, which means a planet with water, it will generate forms of life similar to what we're familiar with. And so that means that all the life in the cosmos is ultimately related. It's all come from the same place. And our ancestors say that some of our relatives, more advanced than ourselves, have turned up in the distant past and tweaked our development, tweaked our evolution a little bit. This is something Plato wrote about in the 5th century BCE. He said we had visitors who, he called them children of God. He didn't say what they were or where they were from, but that they had come and they'd modified our ancestors to be more intelligent, more conscious. And there is that leap that we talked about right at the beginning, the leap in us as a species. Suddenly we're very intelligent. Suddenly we've got technology. And he said that wasn't a natural evolution or a slow, gradual thing. There was an intervention where we were genetically modified. Plato said he got that information from ancient Egyptian sources. But you can listen to ancestral narratives from all around the world. And you will hear that story repeated. Interventions, upgrades. Go to Africa, Mesoamerica, the Nordic countries, Europe, India, the Caribbean, all these cultures have a version of that story. And that's what I've come to believe. And I do believe that it's the memory of at least 3 of those interventions that's embedded in the Genesis stories in the Bible.
Okay, so do you believe then that any extraterrestrial presence helped formulate and form humankind into what we are, or gave us some sort of basis? Because, I mean, when we look at the pyramids, when we look at other great portions of this world, there always seems to be an extraterrestrial element to it. Now, some believe that humankind and humans of today, because we want to believe, we're creating this cycle of, well, the extraterrestrials must have helped us. But then when you look deeper into it, we look at carvings, we look at cave artistry and from ancient people, and there always seems to be something coming up that looks very ET, whether it's spacecraft, whether it's drawings of alien type creatures.
Definitely. I think, if we took our artistic heritage, our artistic canon, as seriously as we do ancient texts, our worldview might be quite different, because you're quite right. You can go to Algeria, you can go to Australia, you can go all around the world. And as you say, you'll find carvings that are instantly recognizable. You go to Central America, you'll find, there's a whole section in the Museum of Guatemala of sculptings that look like Bluetooths and space helmets. They have a whole section for that. And it's impossible for you or for me to look at those and not say that's a space helmet with a Bluetooth. It's just obvious what you're looking at. Our ancestors might not have recognized it, but we know what we're looking at. In Australia, you've got images of astronauts, flying saucers. In Algeria, you've got pictures of what people would call today small greys, instantly recognizable. Go to India and you'll find very similar carvings. Now, if you just go to that without presuppositions, with a blank piece of paper, without preconceptions, you will recognize what you're looking at. It's our worldview that gives us a problem at that point. Do we believe that our ancestors painted and carved what they saw, or can we come up with another explanation for that? But there's also an aspect of it in artistic history that sometimes artists are given privileged information and they put it into their work. And it's true of movie writers, script writers, novelists. You'll find real information that's been passed on from privileged sources, and the writers put it into a story. I think our artists have done that as well.
But they had to have that inspiration. I don't
Yeah.
think that somebody 40,000 years ago was thinking about what grays look like, or what black triangles or boomerangs in the sky look like with lights coming off of them.
No, I think they absolutely carved and painted what they saw. And there are some very simple examples of that. There were mass sightings of UFOs in Germany in the 1500s, and they were simply portrayed in paintings and woodblock carvings. This is what happened, and there it is in the record. And I think that's no different to some of these far more ancient pictures and carvings that we find.
Have we taken that seriously enough as archaeologists, as scholars, as historians?
It depends where. I think if you listen, for instance, to Indian archaeologists interpreting the carvings they found there, they take that pretty seriously. And they're willing to say that these appear to be carvings of non-human entities. These appear to be carvings of craft, things today we would call flying saucers. I think if you go to Central America, again, you will hear more archaeologists willing to just say it plainly. This is what it looks like, because their cultures are somewhat different. But I think if you come to the USA or to Australia, we know what it looks like, but we want to find some other explanation.
Okay. With that being in fact, because looking here, anything to do in North America, or even in Western Europe, we seem to poo-poo anything that has anything to do with extraterrestrials. That somebody was, there might have been a species of monkey that had giant black eyes and a round head and no hair, or it might be just a cave drawing, and that's the way they drew humans back then. They never put the obvious to the obvious unless it's an elephant or an ox or a dog.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And you say we seem to poo-poo, but I mean, the fact is we have been trained to do that. That was government policy in America and in the UK and in other countries for 70 years, nearly 70 years, to train people to dismiss these things. So most governments around the world would employ people, either directly or through defense, whose jobs were to collate public experiences of UFO encounters or close encounters, and to classify the cases that could not be explained, and to publicize the cases that could be easily debunked. I mean, people were paid to do that for decades. And it was only in the early 2000s that governments around the world allowed those offices to be vacated, decided that was no longer the policy. And so that policy of debunking and of very aggressive attack of journalists who pursued these stories and very aggressive silencing of experiences. I mean, we now know that the residents of Roswell were silenced with death threats from US military. That's now information in the public domain, to keep a lid on that story. So that was the policy. We were trained through the radio, through the TV, through the press for decades to make a joke of people claiming close encounters, to debunk it. That only began to change in the early 2000s. And now we're in a place where we're getting semi-official disclosures acknowledging contact. So acknowledging the fact that the Pentagon has had a department for all those decades whose job has been to investigate physical materials from what are believed to be UFO crash retrievals. So that's now acknowledged. That's acknowledged by French intelligence. Alain Gillier, the former head of French intelligence, has acknowledged that is the job of that group. He was there when the latest iteration of that group was set up. We've heard from Chris Mellon, the former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Presidents George W. Bush and President Clinton, saying, yes, that body exists. Eric Davis, eminent physicist, says, yes, I briefed that group regularly. And now Haim Eshed from Israel, again, backing it up. We've got very credible physicists. I've suddenly blanked on his name. He's the guy who appears in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Jacques
Vallée, that's right, who is talking openly about the fact that he is examining metamaterials, again, materials that appear to have been generated off planet. So that's a huge culture shift, that these things are now being acknowledged, whereas in the past, we were all taught to laugh at it and debunk it.
Well, we have a lot of questions in regards to that, as well as in hour number 2. I'm going to take some questions from our audience in the chat room for you, because I know they will be wanting to hop on and get involved with the chat, because they're pretty brilliant. They really are pretty brilliant when it comes to it. So, Paul, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Paul Anthony Wallis is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His book, Escaping from Eden: Does Genesis Teach That the Human Race Was Created by God, Engineered by ETs? I got to see this, man. We're going to talk about this and more when we come back, because, hey, the aliens seem to get their name and their fingers into absolutely everything. Are we giving the aliens enough credit here on the mighty SOR and in the world around us? Who knows? We'll find out from Paul Anthony Wallis when we come back in hour 2 next. That was a fun first hour, man.
Oh, good.
I'm just going to run my dogs outside in the snow. I'll be right back.
You can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is Watching.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at mightymoosebeard.com today.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Hey Space Travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena.
You having fun yet, Paul? You got your mic on mute.
I said, yes, I'm having a great time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm enjoying this, man. This is deep.
Oh, good.
This is deep.
Yeah.
All right.
We feel free to take it. I'd love to talk a little bit about what some different cultures, some of the different cultures and how they carry the stories. But it's interesting, this culture shift we were just talking about, because I'm certainly seeing that in Australia.
Yeah, let's go there. Let's go there. Let's give a quick shout out to people who have joined us here. And that would be Off-World Adam, Polar Eclipse, Cat the Kit, Thurston Howell III, Big Fat Creep. Good to have you guys all back. And who else am I missing here? Am I caught up that quickly? I think I maybe. Rafaela, welcome back. Chris Reap, good to see you. Chris says, vacation starts tomorrow. Heading to California to surf. You in, Dave? No. Dave doesn't do the ocean. Don't get me on a rant about this, man. There's sharks there. Sharks kill people. I'm a meal. No. All right. Gorgeous Larry, $5,900. Welcome back to the show. Eric with a K. We are his fourth favorite show. We are number 4 in Eric with a K's world. It's awesome. We were once number 5, previously number 2, but we fell back to number 4. Then we dropped to 5, but we're back up to 4, which is nice. Fourth favorite show of Eric with a K's. All right. Big thank you to Human Carl and to Cat Chaser for those amazing super chats. Thank you so much for supporting this show. We really do appreciate it. Hey, Lexi Fox, how are you? Good to have you here. And hit that subscribe button if you're new. We're trying for 15,000 subscribers. Before May 24th, we're at 10,761 before tonight's show. Hit that thumbs up, hit the thumbs down, the thumbs sideways, and we'll get ready to rock and roll here in about 5 seconds. Paul, you sit tight. We'll reintroduce the show and reintroduce you.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. We have DeFreeze. DeFreeze is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We bring on Paul Anthony Wallis tonight, all the way from Australia. His website, paulanthonywallis.com. I highly suggest you check it out, where you can find his book, Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by ETs? Welcome back, Paul.
G'day, Dave. Good to be with you.
All around the world, there are legends and stories that have been passed down for millennia, generation to generation, from elders about how everything was created. We hear of the sun, the moon, the water, the heat, all having its own life force, the planet having its own unique life force in Mother Earth. But we also hear about the star beings, the star people. I know, like, around my area, we have a First Nations group that really believes that a lot of their members every year get taken by the star people. I mean, this is something that has gone on for millennia, as I stated. You know, culturally speaking, around the world, whether it's the Inca or the Australian Aboriginals, I mean, they are everywhere with these stories.
That's absolutely right. If you listen to the indigenous stories, the folklore, the things that are known by the people of countries all around the world, you will hear stories like the one you just described from the Native American people you're talking about, stories about our origins, and stories about abductions. Now, in the USA, in Australia, it's the same. If someone comes along and says, I was abducted by aliens, they really are at the high comedy end of the spectrum as far as most people are concerned when they come forward with a story like that. But if you listen to indigenous and ancestral narratives all around the world, the story of what we call alien abduction is ages old. And I didn't fully appreciate this until I researched my new book, The Scars of Eden. And the way I became aware of it was I produced this book, Escaping from Eden, that you were just talking about. And before it came out, I thought, Now, with a subtitle like that, it could worry some people. It could offend some people, and maybe I should sit down and explain to my parents-in-law what this book is that's going to come out, because they are devout believers, Baptist and Pentecostal heritage. They're from Ghana originally. They're now Australians. And I thought, I don't want our family politics to be upset by me writing this very controversial book, so I'd better prepare them for what it's about. So I sat down with them one Sunday afternoon after a lovely lunch when we were all feeling relaxed and happy, and I said, Kofi Patience, let me just tell you about this book I've been working on. And so I talked them through what the book was about, which is about paleo contact, extraterrestrial species visiting us in the distant past, and having hands-on involvement in our development as a species. And I explained that I actually find this in the Bible, and explained it all to them. They were giving no reaction, total silence, poker faces. I didn't know how this was going down. And then finally, when I'd finished my explanation, my father-in-law, Kofi, said, "A penny has dropped." And then my mother-in-law, Patience, said, she leant forward and said, "Paul, we already know this story. In Ghana, people know this story." And she talked about the Mami Water people and about a tradition of abduction narratives in Ghana. She said, we are very close to a family that had this experience where their daughter went missing for 3 years. And when she reappeared, she didn't want to say where she'd been, what had happened to her. Her parents obviously wanted to know, where did you go? Why couldn't you contact us? They were expecting a story of a failed elopement, or she'd been kidnapped, or it was human trafficking, or something like that. But finally, she said, I was held against my will. It was in an underwater base. They used me to produce children, and my captors were not human. They were the Mami Water people. Well, they had heard this story because it is centuries old in Ghana, and I discovered that the same story is told all around the coastal regions of Africa. You can hear it in Nigeria. You can hear it all up the western seaboard into the Caribbean, Brazil, Haiti, Cuba. You can go to the Philippines. The same stories are told there. In the Philippines, they have words whose only function in their language is to tell that story. The roots of that story are in India. The words clue us to that. You can find it in Greece, in Europe, the Nordic countries. And then I discovered Ireland, Scotland, Wales all have these stories as well. Abduction, used to produce children, returned after a while, having been kept in underwater bases. Now, when I started writing The Scars of Eden, I hadn't intended to write a book that focused very much on abductions, because I just don't think it's a subject people take very seriously. But the moment you start listening to world mythologies and ancestral narratives, whether it's to Aboriginal Australians, First Nation Canadians, Native Americans, the stories are right there. And you have to do business with them and work out, why is this story repeating all around the world? And what does it mean? Especially, what does it mean when people return and say, this was my experience?
That can go in so many different ways, though. I mean, we hear that about extraterrestrials. We hear that about creatures like Bigfoot or the Yeti. We hear it about gnomes and other interplanetary type species that are said to live in inner Earth. I mean, does this open up a whole catalyst of creatures as to why they may be scooping up human beings?
Well, yes, some of these abduction narratives make no mention of a connection with the stars. Some of them do, like the Native American story that you just described. Some of them are agnostic about who these other people are who look human but are not human. So, there could be a whole spectrum of demographics involved in taking human beings for whatever reason. But the stories that I found recurring that really caught my attention are ones that say that at least some of these abductions happen because there are visitors from other planets who actually want to enrich their own gene pool with what we have. They actually find human beings very attractive. If you go to Genesis 6, that's how the story is told there. It's told that the Bene Elohim, ones like the powerful ones, is how I translate that, found human females very attractive and wanted some of that in their gene pool. And so there is that interplanetary, interstellar aspect to the story. But it is so widespread and I believe so current. It's the kind of story that people hold very close. They don't go around boasting about these experiences in our culture. But people contact me every week. In some weeks, it's every day with anomalous experiences. And from what I'm learning in that way, I am beginning to develop the picture that these experiences are far more widespread than we've ever imagined. And if we would allow people to speak and listen without seeing it as high comedy or with the need to debunk, then we might learn a thing or two about what's going on planet Earth.
Does the story change from culture to culture, from continent to continent? So, for instance, let me verify that. What we see in Egypt and what we've read in the texts and in the hieroglyphs in Egypt, are they the same story as what we hear in Mexico with the Incas, or what we hear from the the mountains of Russia and China, from the ancient civilizations there?
Yes, well, there are a lot of overlaps. All those sources that you named, there are overlaps in the stories told, both to do with who these other beings are, what they look like, their size, what their influence was in human society. They all tell a story that says that our ancestors were originally governed by leaders who were not human, and that, in fact, our whole paradigm of leadership is rooted in that primitive experience of being governed over by beings who had no fellow feeling with us. And in my book, The Scars of Eden, that's one of the scars that I talk about, that our psyche has been affected and in some places traumatized by the experience of being overpowered by other beings who then corralled and governed us. So that's an aspect that repeats. But there are many really interesting details that correlate from place to place. And it's been more the similarities that have caught my eye than the differences from culture to culture. One difference, though, is how the cultures report it, because in Australia, I was blown away a couple of years ago. A lady called Jane Pooley, just a very regular seeming lady. She's a registered nurse. She's been 30 years in nursing. Very regular kind of lady, except that she says that as well as her 3 children who were born in the normal way, she has been abducted and been used to produce 2 hybrid children as well. Now, she went on national television and shared that story and was given a serious listen by Ita Buttrose, who's the chair of Australia's ABC. Now, the fact that she was given a serious hearing represents a bit of a culture shift over here, because it's not always been like that. But most people, when they hear that story, will startle at it as if they've never heard the like before. Whereas if you go to Greece and ask a question about where the Minoans came from on the island of Knossos, you will be told, oh, the Minoans were the result of an abduction, where a princess of Phoenicia was kidnapped by a non-human entity and produced 3 hybrid children, and one of them was Minos, and he was the leader of the people who lived on this island. And in Greece, you're taught that as history, not as make-believe, not as fable. That is part of history. And in fact, the mother of Minos has the whole of Europe named after her. Her name was Europa. And so here you've got Europe named after an ET abductee. That's how historic and mainstream that story is there. Whereas in Australia, it's really considered a fringe concept and, really almost a comedic piece. So there is that spectrum as to how the story is told. If you sit down with Aboriginal elders or listen to Native Americans, they will tell you very seriously that their ancestors were taught and nurtured by beings who came from the stars, specifically the Pleiades. And it's not comedy, it's not fiction, it's their explanation of who they are and where they came from. And so that difference of approach and attitude, it's more that I see differing from culture to culture. The actual elements of the story seem remarkably consistent all around the world.
With a lot of these cultures that have claimed to have this history, do we see a lot of interaction, whether it's peaceful or not, with these star beings, around the world?
Well, some of the interaction is benevolent, certainly, and my journey into this was through the book of Genesis, and the first intervention that gets mentioned there is a benevolent one, where the planet has been devastated, I believe, by a comet. I think that Genesis 1 is actually recalling the state of the planet after the Clovis comet of about 12,000 years ago. And the people who arrive at that point are helping with a rehabilitation of planet Earth and a re-nurturing of life on Earth. If you listen to the Mayan story from the Popol Vuh, the story is told there again of a flooded planet in a state of chaos, and these beings who are described as those who engineer turn up, they hover over the waters, and they discuss how to nurture life on Earth and sentient life. So it's a benevolent intervention. Native Americans speak about a benevolent intervention teaching them how to farm and move from an animal subsistence level to a civilization level where we can farm and build settled communities. I find that really interesting because it's a scientific problem that's long been acknowledged. This sudden leap forward in the human story 10,000 years ago, where from out of nowhere, suddenly we've got farms and cities appearing. And in 1998, Manfred Hoyne from the University of Az in Norway took a team from there and the Max Planck Institute to what appears to be the site of the first farm in known history. From about 10,000 years ago, suddenly they work out how to genetically modify 11 crops. Suddenly they work out how to do animal husbandry. And then one family, apparently. And then suddenly that information crops up all around the planet. Our indigenous peoples have stories all about that, the visitors who came and taught us those things. But if you come to Australia and listen to Aboriginal elders here, they will talk about a far older intervention, something that's more than 60,000 years old, which is how long the Aboriginal Australian culture takes us back. And there is a different agricultural intervention as well. And it's just very interesting that there are two very different models of farming that we now see clashing in the 21st century. One leads to natural, rotational, combination, organic farming, where you seed next year's crop from this year's harvest. And the other model is infertile ground, so you need petrochemicals, genetic modification, patented foods and seeds that you buy each year. And right now we're seeing the clash between those cultures. Well, our indigenous peoples tell us that that clash didn't originate on planet Earth. It originated from the cultures who seeded us as a farming species 10,000 and 60,000 plus years ago.
I got to ask you in regards to, and this may be a little off topic, but language. I mean, if I look at it and these ET species come down and they've been interacting with us, say, for 12, 15,000 years, when we finally started to realize that we were human, how would they affected the language that is used around the planet? Because, I mean, there's over 5,000 of them, and that's a lot of dialect to try and figure out.
That is a really, really intriguing question. Now, there are a couple of places you could take that to. One is the study of people groups, ancient and modern, who have languages. I've suddenly blanked on the term for it, but the languages that don't seem to be related to the neighboring languages. And very often they have very remarkable stories that have a connection with star people. But whether there's been any, if I can say, loan words from extraterrestrial visitors, I'm not sure about that. I've not seen a lot of evidence for that. One of the very intriguing things about the Sumerian stories, for instance, which I discovered through my study of the Bible, because the Genesis stories turn out to be a summary form of the ancient Sumerian stories from 6,500, 7,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. They have these stories of the sky people who came, colonized planet Earth, taught our ancestors all the rudiments of farming, city building, money, writing, legal systems, mathematics, science, technology. What's interesting about those stories is that those beings who came and taught all those things, the hint is there that they didn't talk out loud, and that they found human beings very, very annoying because we talk out loud. They communicated telepathically, and that was how they communicated with the human populations as well. So it's very possible that those visitors could have had zero impact on human languages, which is rather intriguing. But where I do find a really interesting thread to follow is in vocabulary that recurs from culture to culture in the telling of these stories. And there's a video I did on the Paul Wallis Channel just recently. I think it was the one titled "Was Jesus an Alien?" Rather provocatively. And it talks there about this word Anak, Anax, Anak, Anakim, Anunnaki, and finding that that word travels all around the world to describe very often giant people who are our ancient leaders. And so those are the kind of threads I like to follow that says there was contact. There was contact on a global level with these other entities, and we were given a name for them, and that's been remembered.
We've got about 2 minutes here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Our guest tonight, Paul Anthony Wallis. PaulAnthonyWallis.com is his website. As we combine the history of how we got here, do you believe that extraterrestrials really helped create everything that we have, from the pyramids to waterways to how to farm?
My belief is they gave us the technology that enabled us to do those things. When you look at some of the megalithic structures in Central America and certainly in Egypt, we do not know what technology that they used to produce those results. And I would suggest that in the carvings, there is evidence that the technology they used is technology we don't have now, and that technology may have been the gift of our visitors.
Where'd that technology go?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, I think it went with the death of some cultures. So there was a deliberate extinction of Egyptian knowledge, for instance, as the history of empires plays out, and you go into the Greco-Roman period. And I think some of that knowledge was lost when the languages were suppressed, when people could no longer read the hieroglyphics. But the actual equipment, I think our visitors took it with them. And then when cultures died, whether through natural disasters, comets, etc., they took that information with them. But I think some information always survives, and that is maybe that's for another discussion in the next hour, where that information goes and how that relates to esoteric traditions.
Oh, we can definitely get into that, my friend, because I mean, I'll be honest with you, I am so into this subject, but so confused by it as well, because it's a hard lot and a hard pill to swallow when you're literally looking at an entirely different history than what you've been taught. And that is a major thing. We could get into that too when we come back. Paul Anthony Wallis giving us an educational whipping on humankind's history on this planet that we call Earth. His website, paulanthonywallis.com. We'll be back with Spaced Out Radio right after this. You have me thinking deep tonight.
Oh,
Thinking
good.
deep.
Excellent. Well, I hope that's good.
I think so. I
Yes,
think
the
so.
the technology thing is really interesting. There's a story I'd love to tell of what happened when the Spanish and Portuguese got to Central and South America, because it's a great case study in how privileged information gets archived for the elites, and then the rest of us get told another story.
Like flat Earth.
Yeah, you could say that. Or another great example is, we were talking about higher abilities earlier. And do you know the story of John Dee at all?
No.
See, John Dee is fascinating because he's someone who was reading esoteric material that goes all the way back to Plato, all the way back to Egypt, and he had developed methods for remote viewing. So Queen Elizabeth I employed him to develop a department of remote viewing that was right in the roots of what became MI5. So Queen Elizabeth set MI5 up. She wanted a remote viewing department. So John Dee was doing stuff that if you weren't doing it for the crown, you'd be executed for witchcraft.
Right.
So it was one knowledge for the privileged, and the crown wanted that technology, and the public were not to know about it, and they'd be executed if they did know about it. And the methods he was using was information that had survived from all the way back to ancient Egypt. And so it's a great case study in, one information for the public, one information for the leaders.
Give me 1 second here, because I have to get to one of my sponsors here, which is Mighty Moose Beard Oil. This is what takes care of my beard and makes it look lovely, masculine, and absolutely smashing each and every day. This is purely Canadian. It is 100% natural, no chemicals. Gary the Dutchman, and if you know Dutchman like I do, they never give you a deal on anything. But Gary the Dutchman is going to give you a deal on this if you use promo code SOR2019. Look, there's very rare times in life where you actually get to take advantage of a Dutchman giving you a deal. It's very, very true. All right? But at MightyMooseBeard.com, you can work it. Larry, if you want to use it for your gorgeous leg hair, you go right ahead. Let me demonstrate how we use this. We just open it up, grab a little bit of beard oil there, throw it into your hand like so. Make sure you put the lid on, because I've spilt this, and it's oily because it's beard oil. And then you just massage it into your hands and rub it in. That's it. It's that easy. That easy, people. This is how I take care of my beard each and every day. And for the ladies out there, see, you just rub it in your hair. You just rub it in your hair. That's it. And it helps make sure that your hair stays moisturized, gets good stuff in there, and it helps control split ends. It does. That's why I use it in my hair as well. MightyMooseBeard.com. Check it on out. And you'll get a promo and it's a discount from Gary if you use promo code SOR2019 today. So make sure you check it on out. There we go. I had to give the plug.
Very good. I'm very jealous of your head of hair, Dave, I must say.
I can lend you some.
Most impressive.
Totally lend you some. Totally lend you some if you need.
Well, I'm doing that bald plus beard thing.
I like
which
the
is
beard.
also very fashionable.
Extremely. Bald plus beard is good. You want some beard? I can lend you some.
It is a very dramatic beard you have there.
It's
impressive.
I normally don't like it this long, but I just decided to grow it because in wintertime, believe it or not, it actually helps.
Oh, I know. I should say my mom and dad lived in Montreal for 10 years, so Canadian winters, I remember what they're like.
Yes. And we're going to come back here in about 40 seconds. Big thank you to Howard, to Chris, to Human Carl, and to the awesome Cat Chaser for the incredible super chats tonight. It's a great way to support this show. Thank you to everyone who has given us the thumbs up tonight. And if you're new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate earning that. And we're trying to get up to 15,000 by May 24th. And we're moving all along. We're getting there. Every day we're getting new subscribers, which is cool. Let's get this thing going in like 5 seconds. So sit back and relax and enjoy as the woo continues right after this. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us in. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with author Paul Anthony Wallis. His website, paulanthonywallis.com, where you can find his book, Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by ETs? That's a nice question mark you got at the end of that too, Paul. Really appreciate that. Good punctuation. Good punctuation. All right, I want to ask you, right before the break, we were talking about technology. Where did the technology go if extraterrestrials, help build the pyramids, help make waterways, help build the legendary and mythical Atlantis, whatever it may be? I mean, we have some incredible structures that have lasted for millennia, and we still have no clue outside of the idea of slavery on how they've been made.
That's very true. Well, I think through history, there have been some moments where there's been a very deliberate suppression of information about our ancient past. And it ties in with the history of empires. So a classic example would be the Emperor Theodosius in 381 of the Common Era, jumped into a theological debate that was going on in the church at the time and ruled on it. And by doing that, he really anchored the church to the powers of empire, showed that he was in charge of everything, that he was the department of truth, the department of information. He was the one who was the arbiter of fake news and real news. And now orthodoxy was the only story, because if you try to teach a different story, suddenly you're a subversive, you're anti-government. You're a conspiracy theorist, to use the language of today. And so all the other groups that had alternative stories of who we are and where we all came from, and the technology that was bound in with our built heritage, all that became fringe, was taken off bookshelves, and was buried. So this is where the Dead Sea Scrolls come from, texts that were buried for their protection, because now they were regarded as anti-empire subversive literature. So once those things are buried, it's only secret societies of priests who know where the stuff is buried who have that information. And so that's the beginning of the esoteric traditions. Once everything is put into Latin and the local languages are no longer taught in the educational establishments, those languages begin to die. And so we came to a situation where now we're in a period of history where we've got this incredible wealth of information about ancient Egyptian history, what was built, by whom, how, what the stories were. It was all lost because now nobody could read them. And that was a matter of deliberate policy. And so Theodosius, 4th century of the Common Era, is narrowing down what he wants people to know about. For a more recent example, if you think of what happened when the Roman Catholic forces went into Central and Southern America, Portugal and Spain turn up, and their job is to Catholicize those countries, bring them into empire, under the Spanish Empire, under the Portuguese Empire, which are all part of the Roman Catholic Empire. They go in, they have letters patent to use whatever force is necessary to dominate those countries, and then they become the Department of Truth, the Department of Information. And again, all the local ancestral narratives of who we are, where we came from, any knowledge of the technology that built the megalithic structures there, they have to be buried. And so we have a document like the Popol Vuh that was buried, burned, the priests executed, and a few copies of the Popol Vuh, what became the Popol Vuh, sent to the royal libraries in Spain and the papal libraries in Rome. So you go to those libraries, which are accessed only by, the religious elites or the royal elites. They know the earliest stories. They know the stories of visitors who terraformed the planet. They know the stories of other technology, but nobody else does. Everybody else is now being taught this narrow, orthodox version of Christianity by all the schools and churches that are now set up. And yet that information is surviving. So you've got these elite libraries that have got the information. You've got these secret priesthoods who know where the texts are buried. The Popol Vuh actually resurrected because it was carried as by the descendants of the priesthood of the Mayan tradition, the priesthood of the feathered serpent, and they told the story to a Dominican priest they trusted in 1700, and he translated it into Spanish, so we found out what the earliest story was. But there you've got an example of one set of information for the elites who can get into the Vatican Library or the King of Spain's library, and one set of information for everybody else. And we were talking in the break, Dave, about John Dee, who in Queen Elizabeth I's court was using remote viewing technology that he had developed through his studies that went back to ancient Egyptian sources. He was providing remote viewing for what was the beginnings of MI5, for Queen Elizabeth I. What he was doing, if a member of the public was doing that, they would be executed for witchcraft. But the Crown wanted that technology because they wanted to know what their enemies and allies were thinking and planning in countries where they couldn't afford to employ spies. And so that's an example of one body of knowledge for the VIPs and one body of knowledge for everybody else. And in the case of Queen Elizabeth I and John Dee, it involved these technologies that had survived for thousands of years that go right back to our visitors who provided the technologies when they visited. But now it's all hidden. Now it's for the privileged, and the rest of us are just told to lap up a different story.
I have a question for you from Frapsap in our chat room. Paul, do you have a belief in a spiritual side or afterlife where souls are immortal? And if so, who created the souls, not just the physical matter of life?
Well, as we said right at the beginning, I believe in souls in the sense of I am an individual consciousness, and so are you, Dave, and that consciousness comes from the source consciousness. I think that probably is immortal. I don't think that does die. I think that comes into this material life and then goes somewhere else afterwards. What was the second half of the question? I forgot that, sorry.
Give me 2 seconds here. And if so, who created the souls, not just the physical matter of life?
Yes, okay. So I think we are aspects of the cosmic consciousness. So I think we all come from that source, from that 0 point. That's how I would see that. So though our material life is on a timeline because of how matter works, I think our consciousness is not.
Another question coming from the gorgeous and talented Kira. Literally, that's how she spells out her name. And she goes, Paul, do you believe we are running out of reincarnated souls? And are there soulless people? Maybe they are ETs in human body.
Well, the gorgeous and talented Kira, that is a great question. I don't believe we are running out of souls, because I believe that the material universe is still being generated from what quantum physicists call the 0 point. I think that process is ongoing. The idea of soulless people, I think, might arise from contact with other beings who don't have the same capacity for consciousness that we do. And I think sometimes we assume that if a species is advanced enough to be able to get to planet Earth from another bit of the cosmos, we think they must be better than us in every regard. But I don't think that is the case, just because they have better or more developed tech. And if you're willing to take seriously people's accounts of encounters with small greys, as they're often described, there I think you're looking at a being that does not have the same capacity for consciousness that we do. Certainly, the impression is they don't have the same capacity for imagination or emotionality that we do. There's just this cold clinical robotic aspect to them. Not that they're robots, they just don't have the same wiring we do. And I think there's a spectrum of beings out there. And I think one of the reasons we have the interest of some of our visitors is that as animals, as mammals, as a fusion of Earthling and ET, I think there is a subtlety to our ability to process consciousness that may well be far more advanced than what is being experienced by some of our visitors. And when in Genesis 6, it says the ones like the powerful ones found human females attractive and wanted some of that in their gene pool, I wonder if it's some of this richness of human experience that they want. And so soulless people, I think, well, maybe they've got a bit more ET and a little less human. Maybe that's where that story comes from. But I don't think it's because we're running out of consciousness in the universe.
All right, let's move on to another question here. And let's see. Marty is asking, oh goodness, the chat room jumped here. Or let's go to Theodora first. Do you believe in demons? A lot of people tend to believe that demons are what is coming from the sky, because biblically, that's what we've been taught.
Yes, people have been taught that. I get frustrated with people who get very dogmatic about this, and I think it's because that in mainstream Christianity, the whole of reality fits into a few very small boxes. So you've got animal, vegetable, mineral, God, the devil, angels, demons, and there are no other boxes. So if you've got some being turning up and appearing to be harmful towards human beings, and it can, go in and out of visibility, people will say, oh my goodness, what books do I put that in? Well, let's put it in the demon box. But no, I don't think that is accurate. I think demons, if you're willing to take, say, the biblical text at face value, demons are spiritual beings that seem to operate as, what's the word where one thing lives off another? Help me. I'm having a senior moment here, Dave.
I'm having a 15-hour day moment right now.
All right, I'll put it in that very simple way, that they are energy-based beings that live off us. So they live off our fear, they live off our anger, they get energy from that. Some traditions, like the Gnostic Gospels, talk about archonic beings that manipulate human thought so that we exhibit more of those negative behaviors, and then they either get high off that or they feed off that. And I think demonic beings are archonic beings. That's how the stories play out in the biblical text. That's what I think they are. I think they are another kind of being in the universe. But I also believe there are other material beings just like us, or very similar, who live on other planets, who may have better tech, and they're not demons. They are just other residents of our cosmos.
All right. Dr. Marty is asking, was Jesus divine, extraterrestrial, or human, or all of the above?
Oh, great. That's a wonderful question. Short answer, I reckon all of the above. My research for the scars of Eden and escaping from Eden says ultimately we're all hybrids. We're all earthling with a bit of ET in us. And if it's true of us, then it's true of Jesus. So if he was human, which I absolutely believe he was, then he was a hybrid. But there is also this amazing tradition of stories all around the world, centuries old, still being experienced today, of anomalous pregnancies. Now, the Bible tells us Mary's pregnancy with Jesus was anomalous, that it was an artificial pregnancy, same as her cousin Elizabeth, who had an artificial pregnancy, gave birth to John the Baptist, same as Samson's parents in the Hebrew Scriptures, same as Abraham and Sarah, who gave birth to Isaac after a close encounter with sky people, same as the mother of Emperor Lao Tzu and the Yellow Emperor. We call these the offspring of these anomalous pregnancies star children, because we believe there's been an interference in the pregnancy, that there's a little bit more ET in that person. If we go to the root stories, which I do, and in the Christian tradition, Hebrew tradition, the root story is Abraham and Sarah and Isaac. Jesus's story is in that tradition, and it's told that way. So I reckon that Luke in the Gospel is telling us Jesus's birth was similar to Isaac's, that there was an interference or intervention in the pregnancy that resulted in him, which means he's got a heightened consciousness, and that's where his heightened intelligence has come from. That's where the incredible insight has come from that gives us this teaching. Now, the $64,000 question is the divinity one. Is he divine in a way that the rest of us aren't? Read The Scars of Eden for my answer to that bombshell of a question.
All right, let's move on to another question here while we have time. The audience is jumping in, and once they jump in, we let them go. Let's see here. Eric is asking, how much does our soul weigh? Have you figured that out?
That's a really interesting question. I don't have the figure off the top of my mind, but I do know that there was some research done decades ago that measured a difference in weight when a person dies, before any biological function has happened. When the consciousness has left the body, there was a weight difference that was calculated.
21 grams.
I don't remember what it was. There were 21 grams.
21
so
grams.
that is really, really intriguing, because it suggests that what we think of as spiritual doesn't mean it's not physical, that there is a reality to consciousness that absolutely intersects with the material world. And just that single piece of information is like a red pill. Once you really process that, that's going to take you down a rabbit hole into the rabbit warren of everything we're talking about here.
Very true. Lexi is asking, do you think we can be reincarnated back in time? With a DeLorean. With a DeLorean.
What an intriguing idea. A lot of people don't know that reincarnation was the belief of some of the very early church fathers. And they got this from Plato. And Plato got this from, I believe, his study of Eastern religion via ancient Egyptian religion. He always had his reincarnation on a more conventional timeline, where we're moving into the future. Now, of course, we're discovering that time is not what we thought it was. Time is not the linear thing we've always imagined it to be. Whether that opens up the possibility of reincarnating backwards, I'd have to read some more quantum and get back to you on that question, I think. But it's a really intriguing idea.
All I know is that question way too heavy for me. That's way above my pay scale, that one. But I do appreciate it. And let's get to Joseph, Mr. Persevere, who is asking, how many alien and Earth actions do you think are fighting for control of this planet right now?
Or how many factions? Yeah, that's a really good question, because in Escaping from Eden, I argue that the proper translation of the Bible reveals a whole number of ET demographics sitting in what the Bible calls the Sky Council, or what Haim Eshed, the Israeli former head of space security, calls the Intergalactic Council. How many? I could talk about the number I've picked up in the Hebrew canon, but it just might be interesting to go to what the former Russian Prime Minister Medvedev had to say a decade ago when he talked about a very large number of intergalactic visitors who are in contact with us. And he said with an absolute straight face while he was being filmed that every new Russian prime minister gets given a folder detailing all the species that we are in conversation with. I don't have a number to give you. I have heard people say 11, but they've actually got that from a mistranslation of Prime Minister Medvedev's statement. What he actually said suggested it is far, far more than that. He didn't want to name a figure, he said, because he didn't want to panic people. So perhaps it's just as well I can't remember a number either.
We've got about 3 minutes before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Our guest tonight, author Paul Anthony Wallis. We are continuing on here with your audience questions. Annie, we call her Awesome Annie around here. She is asking, Paul, what is your opinion of Revelations 10.6 regarding time?
Oh, gosh, she's put me on the spot. What does that verse say? Maybe I'll have to look that verse up in the break, Dave, and see if I can wrap my head around it quickly.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we can totally do that. Totally do that. All right. Continuing on here. And John is asking, if we are created by other beings, does that change the way we look at the human race? Are we just a science project of a lesser being or a lesser being? It seems like ETs act like they have a right to abduct us.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Which I absolutely deplore. I am with Ed Mitchell, the late Ed Mitchell, who was the sixth man to walk on the moon, who believes that we ought to have a place on the Intergalactic Council, that we ought to come to a place where we can say we're a sovereign species and we ought to have a voice on our own destiny. It's a little bit disturbing to think that we have visitors who seem to feel free to abuse our animals and abduct human beings. I think that's quite right. The first half of the question was very interesting. Can you remind me what it was, Dave?
If we are created by another being.
Does that make us lesser?
Yes.
That's really interesting. Because when you read the Sumerian accounts, and it's really echoed in the Genesis accounts and the Mesoamerican accounts and the Greek, it does look like we were genetically modified from a primate ancestor to be a workforce for our ET colonizers. But I think what they created is something remarkable and beautiful and special. In the Popol Vuh, it says that what they created had remote viewing, precognition, telepathic ability, self-healing ability, and they realized, this is far more than we needed. Let's dial them down so that we can manage them and use them as a workforce. But the culture that curated that story has also curated shamanic and mystical traditions that are all about turning those abilities back on, because we are far more than somebody else's slave. Thank you very much. We are a remarkable species, and it's because of that that we attract some of the ET interest that we do. We have a phenomenal ability in love and compassion and higher consciousness, and that's my takeaway from the research I've done for Escaping from Eden and the Scars of Eden, that we are capable of so much more when we realize who we are, what the story of our origins really is, and that we can live on this planet far more intelligently and with greater consciousness than we've done hitherto, because this programming of us as somebody else's slave, as being here to work for superiors, that is not the whole story.
We have him for another half an hour on Spaced Out Radio. PaulAnthonyWallis.com is his website where you can find his book, Escaping from Eden. We'll be back with more questions from you right after this. So much easier when you work in sprints rather than marathons. You know,
Indeed.
these sprints to every half hour. I'm just going to go refill my iced tea. I'll be right back, okay?
Either live during the show
Okay.
or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at mightymoosebeard.com today.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thor, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month, and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightlines report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out a Sightlines report on the Spaced Out Radio website and let's figure out what's going on together.
All right. We've got 2 minutes.
We are scouring the world.
2 minutes.
Right.
Simon Pearson, welcome to Spaced Out Radio's chat room for the first time. Thank you for joining us, man. No, Dave's back there, Lexi. He is back. He is lightning fast. Lightning fast. You have no idea how quickly I made my iced tea. I'm having fun, man.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much for doing this.
You happy with where we're going?
Love it. Love it.
Great.
This is such a curveball from what we normally do that it just feels good.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I hope I've done enough to earn your respect too, man.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've listened to some of your shows. I love what you're doing. You've got a phenomenal voice, by the way, Dave. You really do.
Face for radio, too. Face for radio.
Well, same here.
I paid enough for this voice through broadcasting school, so it better pay off. I can't breathe out of my nose, so, I mean, I'm surprised. Too much hockey.
Oh, is that what happened? Hockey's a rough game.
Not anymore. Like, when I played, man, that was the epitome. That was the epitome. Yep. If you didn't have somebody coming off the ice at least on either team once a game bleeding, it wasn't a good game.
Wasn't a game.
That was yeah. Now it's kind of like, oh well, it's like ballet on ice, and I don't like that.
Oh well.
I know. I know. Imagine if they took the hitting out of Aussie rules football. That's what the NHL and hockey has become.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune us on in. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. If you want to take a listen to our archives, we have them free for you. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Defereeze. Defereeze is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we bring in our guest, Paul Anthony Wallis, all the way from Australia. He's an amazing author with a great book that is highly acclaimed. The book is called Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by extraterrestrials, or ETs, as the book says? But you know what? We'll just go on from there because I butchered that. But nonetheless, his website, paulanthonywallis.com. Paul, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be with you today.
I butchered the book title there. I
that's
apologize.
All right. That's people will see when they go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They will see the real subtitle.
There you go. There you go. Paul has a question for you as we continue with our audience questions. When we deep dream, do we walk in the shoes of our other lives?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Dreaming is a phenomenon, I think, of many, many layers. And through the years, I've had experiences of dreaming that have, in my belief, been experiences of something real, that it's not just been an imaginary thing that my brain conducted while I was asleep, but that I experienced something real. I had an experience at the beginning of last year, before any of this C19 situation happened, and in that dream I was taken somewhere and shown what was about to happen. So I don't think that was my imagination. I think I was actually shown something. I think lots of different things happen when we dream. I was going to mention dreaming in answer to the question from the lady who was asking about Revelation 10, verse 6, and the meaning of time, because I think we were saying earlier that we are really beings of consciousness, and then we have this temporary material experience, and then we go back to being consciousness again. when you dream, it's just interesting to see what your consciousness experience of time is and how it's so different to your experience when you're awake. Anyone who's had a pet will probably know this, or maybe anyone who's had an alarm clock, because your alarm can go off, or your cat can nuzzle you, or your dog can lick your face because it's breakfast time, and your dream is going to concoct an incredible storyline with that lick on your face as the punchline. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. An incredible storyline where the beeping of your alarm is the punchline of the story. And in the dream, that storyline seems to have gone on for a couple of hours. And then the alarm goes off and you realize, oh, it's the alarm. Or you're being kissed by this beautiful lady and you wake up, oh, it's the dog. And you realize that your consciousness has just experienced 2 hours worth a storyline in what must have been a fraction of a second. And I think that's a really simple illustration that our consciousness is experiencing time in a totally different way to the way our bodies do. I have experienced dreams that have given me accurate information about other people, things that were about to happen. And I know other people have had dreaming experiences that have given them an explanation of paranormal experiences that they've had and forgotten. So I think there are all kinds of things that come to us in our dreaming reality. And there are cultures, of course, who take our dreamed reality very, very seriously and teach people to pay close attention to it. And maybe mainstream Western isn't one of those cultures. Look, I've had dreams that have happened clearly because I was cold or I'd eaten too much cheese. So, not every dream is incredibly meaningful. But I think there's a heap to be learned from our dream experience and things to do with reality.
Well, let's stick with dreaming here for a second, because Michael is asking, can we walk in someone else's last minutes of their lives in our dreams?
Oh, I know people who've had that experience. Absolutely. Exactly that. I was contacted by somebody just last week who had had the experience of waking up from a horrible dream, and it turned out to be the last waking moments of a friend of hers, which she found out, I think, later that day. It relates to what we were talking about earlier, Dave, about the fact that we are antennae, that we are antennas for consciousness. And I think sometimes we can process somebody else's conscious experience. Maybe sometimes that's what past life memory is. I'm not sure. Maybe that really is our previous life we're remembering. But I think sometimes if something really vivid or visceral is happening to a person we're connected with, we can have a waking experience and know, oh my goodness, something's just happened to Pete. Or it can happen in our dreams. I've just woken up, something has happened. I'm not sure who it happened to, but I just experienced it. Yes, I know of a number of people who've had that experience. And as I say, only last week I was talking with someone that had exactly that.
All right, let's continue on here with our audience question. Sovereign is asking, do you think the dragon ley lines are used for mind controlling humans? And how do you think that works, if you're familiar with it?
Oh, that's a very interesting idea. It's not something I've researched, to be honest. So next time I'm on, ask me again, and I might know a little bit more about that. But certainly, yes, mind control is part of what our ancestral narratives talk about. Ley lines do play a role in esoteric knowledge that's been carried from the past. How they intersect, I'm going to have to do a bit of research before I can really tackle that.
All right. Is there one big control trying to keep us as average human beings under wraps, under guard? Because, and I hate to use this because I so don't believe in it, but, the flat earthers tend to believe that there is this giant global conspiracy that was put in by royalty and hierarchy and governments hundreds of years ago, because it was a way to control the planet if they said it was round after changing their tune that it was flat. Now, I don't buy that, because we've put people in space. We put a number of things in space, from satellites to dogs and monkeys and whatever it may be. I mean, look what happened with just the landing of Perseverance. I mean, that's an incredible feat on its own. But there is all of these fringe groups who tend to believe that the Bilderbergs or the Illuminati or some sort of satanic cults out there are bringing in and hiding all of this type of history for control of humans. Do you see that happening?
Yes, I'm not a flat earther either, for all the reasons you describe. I mean, you've only got to befriend an international pilot to realize that we do live on a globe, and that anyone who flies an airplane any distance has to navigate and adjust because of that. So, no, I'm not a flat earther. I think, unfortunately, there is a kind of a paranoia about authority that comes from a particular theological stream within Christianity. It's actually I think a theologically rooted idea that you can't trust anyone outside your faith community. And I think that's where some of the energy for flat earthism has come from. But in their defense, I think those people are picking up on a reality, and that is that those who govern us want to know more than the rest of us do. Knowledge is power. And just last year, there was a little bit of upset in Australia because the government here was wanting universities to move further away from an education model and more into a training model. They want our universities to produce what's described as industry-ready human beings. That's something very different from an educated human being. And I think the value of education is that it teaches us to think, and to think critically, and to ask questions. And unfortunately, there is a bit of a dynamic in government that wants to be able to manage the population, and doesn't want us having too much information or too much education in such a way that we become harder to govern or to tell things or to manage. And I think that groups like flat earth groups, they actually pick up on that. And I think they're quite right about that. When you look at what our ancestors have to say about the cabal of ET demographics managing Project Earth, they are always conflicting with each other over how much awareness the humans should have of their situation. How intelligent should they be? What level of awareness and education should they have? And they conflict with each other. I find that reassuring, because it says that there are some in the Intergalactic Federation, to use Hayam Eshed's language, who are more on our side, who want human beings more informed, more empowered. And I'm glad that we've got people batting for us in that cabal of factions. I do find a lot of hope in that, and sometimes I find more hope in that than in our political leaders governing better.
Makes very much sense. Very much sense. I know we have a couple more questions here from our audience. Sovereign is asking, no, pardon me, that was a comment. Greco is asking, so in our dreams, do we travel to other intelligent beings or animals too?
I think that I found so many traditions around the world that have different versions of what we might call astral travel, where our consciousness is taken to another place. And sometimes this happens when we're awake, and sometimes this happens when we are in a dream state. And I believe that sometimes we are engaged with by other beings on that basis. Other people have those experiences when they've taken something, if I can put it that way. People who do ayahuasca ceremonies have that experience. of other beings, other entities interacting, showing us things, taking us places. And very often people will come back and they will talk about encounters with other beings, other kinds of creatures. And as we compare notes, we realize we've seen the same thing. So I don't know if that quite answers what the question I had in mind, but that's certainly something I've picked up on.
Okay, let's get to a question here. I got to find it. Miss Pickles is asking, yes, that is her name, Miss Pickles. She is asking if you are of the Order of the Queen.
I don't think so, because I don't know what it is.
Neither do I. But hey,
so it sounds like it's an esoteric group, and I'm not part of any esoteric group, as it happens.
Speaking of those groups, what about groups like the Masons or the Skull and Bones, or any group like that, secretive society group like that? Do we really need to worry about them and how they are commanding or trying to rule the presence of humans on this planet?
Well, secret societies, they're a bit of a double-edged thing, aren't they? We have needed secret societies through history to curate forbidden knowledge. I mean, that's a fact. And some of these groups, the ones you named, would be talking about knowledge that perhaps the general public isn't privy to. The dark side of it is that secret societies are sometimes used to create loyalties that supersede a loyalty to other things. And that can be rather unhealthy and unhelpful. So there's a bit of a spectrum. Some secret societies can be very dark in the things they get up to. I remember when I lived in Portsmouth, a lot of pets were going missing, and it was being talked about in the local press. And then the journalists who'd been pursuing it realized that a secret society had been taking the pets and been doing awful ritualistic things with them. So there are groups like that I might not want to be part of, but I have to acknowledge that there has been a role for secret societies in protecting documents like the Popol Vuh or like the Gnostic Gospels, and that some of the information they curate might actually be quite helpful and quite important.
Interesting. Very interesting indeed. We've got about 6 minutes left with you tonight. What message are we missing as we go towards the future, or how we've, even before COVID, kind of closed ourselves off as a species to anything that is relevant outside of our own lives? For instance, if we're not interested in watching Monday Night Football here in North America, we don't pay attention to it, because maybe our own little poker game or our own wine night is more important. We've really become an introverted type society before COVID and much since. So what are we missing as people on a general daily basis regarding our future and our history all combined in one?
Well, a couple of things I'd say. First of all, you should pay attention to all those funny little glitchy moments that you've experienced. If you've experienced a fragment of precognition or a glimpse of remote viewing or an experience of telepathy, and virtually everybody has had those experiences, it should immediately get you asking the question, can I develop that? Can I be more conscious than I generally am? When you hear stories of people who have accidents and as a result, suddenly they have a higher cognitive ability than they did before, that should instantly tell you our brains are capable of more than we generally use them for. So I think we need to give much more attention to those things. And in my new book, The Scars of Eden, which is I think it's available for pre-order right now. It certainly is in the UK, any day now in the USA as well. The Scars of Eden is a real call to people to share their own stories of anomalous things. And if we can share our own stories, listen to one another, you'll suddenly realize that we're living in a far more interesting world than we thought we did. And many of us have stories where we can say something funny happened to me. I can't remember all of it. I'll tell you the beginning of it. If we all pulled stories like that, we would start firing off each other and saying, I had the same thing, and I think this happened next. And your whole worldview will begin to open up of where we're living, who we are, and what we're capable of.
Is that why with the younger generation, say this 22 and under crowd, we're starting to see a lot of star children, a lot of, star seeds that people claim, rainbow children, children who are very spiritually connected, much more than we've ever seen before?
I am very pleased to say that I believe this is a positive shift in our culture, that as parents, we are paying better attention to our children and what is happening with them, what they're experiencing, what they're seeing, what they're remembering. And I think it's from that shift that we're beginning to understand our children differently, and as a consequence, our place in the cosmos differently. Those stories of star children, star seeds, very often they don't get shared because the parents are boasting about their kids. I think it's because our culture has shifted and we're paying attention to our children and then remembering that anomalous thing that related to that pregnancy. And it's those kind of stories that I'm hearing more and more and more. And that actually does make me very hopeful that we're moving in a good direction.
Yeah, because I notice even in my kids, they are much more in tune with the planet, much more in tune with themselves, much more in tune with their sexuality, much more in tune with who they want to be right off the bat than they are, or than I was, or even my generation. I'm not that old. I'm only 47.
I agree. And I think when we don't shut our kids' creativity down, we begin to hear some of this kind of genius. I have a boy who's 6 years old, and very often I'll be thinking something and he will speak the thought out loud. And it won't be a 6-year-old's thought, it will be my thought. And it will be connected with nothing in his world or anything we were talking about, but he will just speak it. And I see in him a sensitivity to the world around him, to consciousness. He's a better antennae than I am. And I think we are now in a generation that wants to nurture our kids' abilities and perceptions in a way that in the past we just told them to shut up and get on with their work. So I'm glad to see that shift happening.
Yeah, I look at my little guy, and even the kids in his elementary school classes, and I talked to the teachers about this. The kids are getting more and more brilliant. Now, we could say, well, that's because as parents, we allow them to play more advanced video games or watch more advanced learning shows where they have access to it, like on YouTube, like we've never had growing up in our generation of being children. Could that be it? Or is it something more in the brain? We have about 1 minute.
Yeah, well, I think we're being nurtured. I don't think we're on our own as a species. I think we all have a spiritual team around us, a pan-dimensional team around us, nurturing our development. I think that's part of the story. I'm excited to see it. And I find, for instance, my book, The Scars of Eden, I think when I was 12 years old, I might have struggled with it. My daughter has no problem at all as a 12-year-old dealing with all the concepts that we've spoken about this evening. And I find that very exciting.
My friend, it was such a pleasure to get to meet you and to bring your message and research and knowledge onto Spaced Out Radio. We got to thank our one of our listeners, Justin, who recommended you to Corin's, the booking guy, and said we got to get this Paul Anthony Wallis on. And man, I'm glad we did. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming on Spaced Out Radio. What a pleasure it was to meet you and chat with you.
Thanks, Dave. It's been lovely meeting you. I've really enjoyed being on your show today, and I hope we can talk again sometime.
Let us know, since you live in the future. Are we alive? Are we alive? That's the big one.
All right, I'll do that.
All right. PaulAnthonyWallis.com is his website, his book that you want to get. Wow. I lost a website here. Oh, there it is. Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach the human race that race was created by God or engineered by ETs? I got like 12 or 15 windows up, and all of a sudden I'm like, where is it? It moved. It moved. Oh my God. Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
Good on you.
My friend, thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate you.
That time just sped by like nobody's business.
It does that. It's tricky that way. I don't know how it happens, but it does. And I want to say big thanks, man. Like,
thank you.
These topics, you know, they're a little bit off of my radar. That's why I got Corrence, the booking guy, who does an amazing job. And when I look at him, what the hell is this about? He's like, just do it. You're gonna have fun. You're gonna be great. You know, okay, I'll just do that.
Well, I'm glad you had fun. I've really enjoyed meeting you, Dave. I really enjoyed our conversation. I love how you do it. I'm sorry I couldn't fix your fear of death, but maybe next time.
Oh yeah, don't worry. That's a life one. That's a life one. I'm actually, the reason why I'm freaked out right now, and I told my audience this last night. Last weekend, I had just a horrible nightmare, and I was actually dead. And I was still in my body, and somebody threw my body into water. And I watched from my eyes, you know, go the splash, and I knew I was dead. It's not like I thought I was alive, but I knew I was dead because I'm trying to move my arms and legs to kick back up so I can grab a breath. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm dead. I'm dead. Like, and I could watch I felt myself sinking, and I felt myself getting deeper, and I'm like, don't breathe in. And I'm like, well, you can't breathe anyways. You're dead. And, you know, the light from the upper part, you know, it started off real bright, and then it got real dark until it was just like a little circle. I felt my back hit the floor of the water.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of laying there staring up, and I'm like, you know, how long is my soul going to be here? Because I'm really stuck. I can't move here. I can't move. Can't do anything. And I eventually woke up. And I forgot about the dream, and then I got triggered on Monday watching a YouTube video.
Yeah. So, Dave, are you sure that you were you in that dream?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that I do know.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I just asked because I just wondered if that was like a past life memory.
I don't know. It didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
It did not feel like it. You know, but
wow, that is
it tripped me out. It tripped me out something fierce, man. Tripped me out something fierce.
It sounds trippy. It sounds so vivid as well.
It was
physical.
It was very physical because I even recall hearing the splash in the water. You know.
Have you always had a fear of death, or is it only just since being a dad?
Always. It hit me big time when I became a dad at 25.
I am in no way an expert on past lives or past life therapy, but I am coming to believe in it more and more. And I'm coming to believe that sometimes in this life we can have fixations, positive or negative, that relate to a previous life. Sometimes I think a phobia can be that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a thing that I've always, from a very young age, I've always been fascinated by longevity and noticed people who achieve things in later years. And I've always had the sense that I'm playing a long game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now beginning to think this is a lesson I learned before I was born.
Right.
And I'm applying a lesson I've learned somewhere else. So that's my own personal example.
Right.
But I also have a fixation. I'm very squeamish and nervous about eyes.
Me too.
And I don't really have any reason for that. And I'm wondering if that relates to an earlier experience as well. And it's just possible that your death thing is like that. That it's because of something that happened to you, or another possibility that happened in your family that you've carried somehow on your genes?
Who knows? Not that I know of. My friend,
Because it's something you can't explain, isn't it?
true. I do have to get going because I have to read the news here in like 20 seconds. But thank you so much for being awesome, and we're gonna do this again when your new book is released. Let us know, and we'll get a hold of you. Okay?
Thanks, Dave. All the best. Really appreciate it.
Take care, my friend.
Bye.
Bye. I'm not gonna lie. I really wanted Paul's shirt. Paul had a really nice shirt on. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. What an exciting time to be alive. I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the awesome. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never been a space geek. I've never, really paid attention too much. But these space programs and the race for space totally has me hyped right up. And this continued today as the NASA rover landed on Mars again. It's the 5th time that we've been able to do this. Well, we as human beings, not we as in you and I. Ground controllers at the Space Agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, jumped to their feet, thrust their arms in the air, and cheered in both triumph and relief on receiving confirmation that the 6-wheeled Perseverance touched down on Mars, long a death trap for incoming spacecraft. It took a tension-filled 11 and a half minutes for the signal to reach Earth. Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking signs of past life. Yeah, we're going to find them aliens, thanks to flight controller Swati Mohan's courageous and very profound words. Yes, the crews went absolutely crazy in NASA, and good for them. When you accomplish something like that, you should cheer. You should be able to give a few fist pumps, and maybe an elbow drop to someone who didn't believe in you. The landmark landings, the third visit to Mars in just over a week. 2 spacecraft from the United Arab Emirates and China swung into orbit around Mars on successive days last week. All 3 missions lifted off in July to take advantage of the close alignment of Earth and Mars, journeying some 300 million miles in nearly 7 months. Perseverance, the biggest and most advanced rover ever sent by NASA, became the 9th spacecraft to successfully land on Mars, every one of them from the United States beginning in the 1970s. The car-sized plutonium-powered vehicle arrived at Jezero Crater, hitting NASA's smallest and trickiest target yet, a 5-by-4-mile strip on an ancient river delta full of pits, cliffs, and fields of rocks. Scientists believe that if life ever flourished on Mars, it would have happened 3 billion to 4 billion years ago, when water still flowed on the planet. Over the next 2 years, we plan to see more happening on Mars. Percy, as its nickname, will use its 7-foot or 2-meter arm drill to drill down and collect samples of rocks with possible signs of bygone microscopic life. 3 to 4 dozen chalk-sized samples will be sealed in tubes and sent aside on Mars to be retrieved by a fetch rover brought homeward by another rocket ship. The goal is to get them back to Earth by as early as 2031. Exciting times. It's even fun to read about it, to be absolutely honest. Very fun to read. Humanity has been able to reach distant vistas such as the moon, now Mars, the deep oceans, and the wild expanses of Earth's poles. Now, scientists have made a new breakthrough in the exploration of a very different type of frontier, the hallucinatory world inside dreams. An international team of researchers was able to achieve real-time dialogues with people in the midst of lucid dreams, a phenomenon that is called interactive dreaming. Participants in the study were able to correctly respond to questions such as simple math problems while they were deep in the throes of rapid eye movement sleep. The research reveals a relatively unexplored communication channel that could enable a new strategy for the empirical exploration of dreams, the study says. There are studies of lucid dreamers communicating out of our dreams and remembering to do tasks, said Karen Konkloki, a PhD student at Northwestern University and the first author of the paper in a call, but there is a familiar limited amount of research on the stimuli going into lucid dreams. One thing that surprised us, she said, is that you could literally say a sentence to somebody and they could understand it just as it actually is. Konkoli and her colleagues recruited 36 people to fall asleep in laboratories located in the United States, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, with the aim of entering a lucid state in which the person was aware that they were in a dream. The study included several experienced lucid dreamers, including one individual with narcolepsy, as well as people who were less familiar with this type of dream. That is very cool. Opening up the minds. Totally opening up the minds. That's amazing. Moving on. Ever felt like you've seen a ghost? Put your hand up. I know I have. One couple claimed that they not only can sense the presence of a spirit watching them in their home, but they've caught a whiff of phantom perfume. To top it all off, they've now managed to capture photographic evidence of a blonde ghost bride wandering through their dining room. Spooky stuff indeed. Darren Pallister checked the motion-activated camera in the home he shares with his fiancée, Jessica Mason, and says he nearly fell out of bed when he saw the ghostly image. I suppose you would too, wouldn't you? Well, no, not really. I've seen a few of them. Many believe the image shows a fresh-faced figure wearing a wedding dress as she stands between a dining room table and cabinets staring blankly towards the patio windows. He insists Jessica was asleep when the image was captured at 12:34 early last month on January 2nd, so it's left the paranormal skeptic convinced it's a ghost. Now, Darren and Jessica recently installed cameras around the house to monitor their Frenchie pup's movements, but they now feel they've got another resident to keep track of. Darren said, I was scrolling down through the motion notifications and I nearly fell out of bed when I saw it. I thought, that's mad. And I woke Jessica up to show it to her. She couldn't explain it either. It couldn't have been Jessica because she was asleep and it looks like she got a bit of a fringe onto her and Jess doesn't. So some mates were messing around and saying it's Jess, but I could guarantee it's not. The clothing looks off the shoulder and she hasn't got any pajamas like that either. The next day I started messing with the contrast and sharpness on my iPhone, and when I did, you could really see the face coming through, and that's when I knew it was a different person. Oh, who doesn't live in a haunted house? It's all good. You know, if they make you breakfast, that's great. If they make you breakfast for dinner, you got to get your home exercised. It's that simple. A woman in Southeast Alaska said she never imagined having an issue with bears while winter camping near Haines until one bit her on the bottom. Yeah, Shannon Stevens got a beautiful new scar on her rump, was camping with her brother and his girlfriend, and when she left to use the outhouse after dinner, yeah, she goes, I went to the outhouse, sat on the toilet, and immediately something bit me. She goes, honestly, it didn't occur to me that it was a bear. I didn't know what it was. I just felt the pain and screamed. Shannon's brother came in, Eric, running to the outhouse to see what was wrong. And she's like, I'm going to open the lid and see what's down there, Shannon said. So she says, I grabbed my headlamp and I opened the lid, and right there is a big bear face just staring back at me. Well, what do you expect? You just dropped a dozer on a bear. I wouldn't be too happy if I was that bear either. The pair ran back to the yurt where they cleaned and dressed Shannon's wound, which Eric described as a small puncture, possibly a scratch. As soon as we realized everything was fine, she had this minor wound, but it wasn't a big deal. I think we all started laughing because we couldn't believe how crazy it was. The next morning, Shannon found bear prints all around the house. Alaska Department of Fish and Game Wildlife biologist Carl Koch said they had never heard of a bear popping up from an outhouse toilet before, but added that bears can certainly be awake in the area, even in winter. We get reports every month of this year about bears. They are less common in winter, but they are definitely out and about. Koch believes that it was a black bear based on the tracks near the outhouse. He said the owners of a nearby cabin also reported damage to their outhouse the following day and provided a picture of a black bear roaming nearby. Shannon, though, says the experience has taught her to be a little bit more cautious. I think I'll just look a little more closely next time I enter an outhouse, she said. However, she is grateful her wound has healed, and she has one heck of a story to tell. Bitten on the butt in a winter outhouse. If it isn't bad enough that you got to use an outhouse, now you got to worry about bears. A group of Haines residents had a bizarre encounter with, oh, that's the same story. I doubled it up. Pardon me. I apologize. That's my fault. All right. Here's a cool one. A wildlife photographer has shared a once-in-a-lifetime photo of what he believes is a never-before-seen yellow penguin. Belgian landscape and wildlife photographer Yves Adam said he was leading a 2-month photo exhibition in the South Atlantic back in December 2019 when the group made a stop on an island in South Georgia to photograph a colony of over 120,000 king penguins. While unloading some safety equipment and food onto Salisbury Plain, Adams noticed an unusual sight that he had never seen before: a penguin with a bright yellow plumage. I never heard of a yellow penguin before, the photographer said. There were 120,000 birds on that beach, and there was only one yellow one there. Luckily for the photographers, the tropical-looking penguin landed on the beach close to the group, meaning that they had a perfect view of it, unobstructed by the sea of penguins and the seals in the area. We were so lucky the bird landed right where we were, the photographer says. Our view wasn't blocked by a sea of massive animals. Normally, it's almost impossible to move on this beach because of all of them. It was heaven that he landed by us. If he had been 50 meters away, we wouldn't have been able to see him at all and get this once-in-a-lifetime show. The penguin's strange coloring is due to a condition called leucism, which is the results of loss of pigmentation. This is a leucistic penguin, Adams says. Its cells don't create melanin anymore, so its black feathers become this yellow and creamy color. Scientists have found that the yellow pigment in the penguin feathers is chemically distinct from all other molecules that are known to give color to feathers. Penguins usually use the yellow pigment to attract mates, and we strongly suspect that the yellow molecule is synthesized internally, said Daniel Thomas, a researcher. It's distinct from any of the other 5 known classes of avian plumage pigmentation and represents a new 6th class of feather pigment. As we are aware, the molecule is unlike any of the yellow pigments found in a penguin's diet. In the case of this furry yellow penguin, however, it's unclear whether its distinctive plumage makes the bird ultra attractive or ultra repulsive to the penguin ladies. I'm telling you, this bird is good looking. If I'm a female penguin, I'm like, I need a piece of that. I need a piece of that. Come here, honey. Let's get our penguin on. Let's do that. After Laura Romero was crowned Miss Oaxaca in January of 2019, she told Newsweek Mexico that she was more than a pretty face. However, 2 years later, Mexican authorities alleged that beyond her good looks, she was also involved in kidnapping. An anti-kidnapping unit in the Veracruz state arrested 8 members of an alleged crime group that included the 25-year-old former beauty queen. In a statement, the state's prosecutor's office alleged that the kidnapping ring operated in a rural area that spanned both Veracruz and neighboring Oaxaca, where the former beauty queen was raised and twice won the right to represent the state in the Miss Mexico pageant. Authorities say that the investigations into the kidnapping gang had been ongoing for 2 months. As recently as November 2020, Mojica posted photos of herself on Instagram wearing her Miss Mexico slash from her participation in last year's International Queen of Coffee pageant in Colombia. But the arrest of Mojica isn't unprecedented in Mexico, where numerous beauty queens have been found themselves involved in criminal activities over the years. Perhaps the most profile case was in 2008 when the arrest of Laura Elena Zuniga, along with 7 men, including her boyfriend, who allegedly were members of a prominent drug cartel. Authorities found the group with assault weapons, ammunition, and 16 cell phones, along with bundles of cash. While Zuniga was eventually able to transition into a successful career as a model, other beauty queens connected to organized crime haven't been so lucky. So with this young lady, it's going to see what happens. Yes, back in 2019, Mojica said that beauty pageants had inspired her to become involved in campaigns of altruism or social projects focused on reversing the deficiencies of our state. In December 2020, Veracruz and Oaxaca were ranked 2nd and 3rd, respectively, in the number of kidnappings by state in Mexico, which is considered one of the country's highest rates of kidnapping globally. Scary. Very scary. And finally tonight, in a time when even basic human interactions are discouraged for safety reasons, there is even greater demand for alternate sources of companionship. But if you're not ready for the responsibilities of a dog or cat, Panasonic has introduced yet another companion robot that dutifully pays attention to you through bouts of flatulence, just like a real pet. Great, we have a toy that farts and stinks. Nakobo is easy to describe. He looks like a sock over a ball. He blinks his eyes. He's got a tail, and when you're not paying attention to you, he rips one. I know Sovereign Farts in our chat room would probably love to have this one. Yeah, it has no ability to move. It won't come to you when you call it, so much like a house cat, except in robot form, but it's attached to a moving base so that it could turn side to side, look up and down. Co-developed with robotics researchers from Japan, Nakobo also includes a camera for recognizing faces, multiple directional microphones for recognizing voices and turning to pay attention, touch sensors so it knows when it's being touched or hugged, and a light sensor so that, like a cat, it can enjoy a nap in the bright sunlight. You know, I have a better idea than this. How about you go to your local shelter, get yourself a real pet? Sure, it may cost a little bit more, and of course, a cat won't like you anyways, but you know what? You're giving something proper a forever home, not another bloody robot. How about that? Can we get along with that? Does that work? Works for me if it works for you. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What's a positive change you've made in your life recently? Dirty Filth. Taking my artwork a little bit more serious, finally hunkering down to put a book of my recent stuff together. Dirty Filth, I want to write the foreword on that, man. I totally do. Eric with a K. I made Spaced Out Radio my second favorite show. I don't believe you, Eric with a K, because for like the last 3 years, we've been number 4. We dropped to number 5, but we moved up to number 4. I think you're teasing me. Anthony, less sobriety. Well, everyone's got to have a goal. Gil, stop visiting the fridge in the middle of the night. Jeff, stop being a waffle like Dave Scott, or at least trying. We shall see. Thanks, Jeff. Davey, I'm exchanging medication for meditation. 15 minutes of meditation each day as I come off my antidepressant meds. Good for you, Davey. Good for you. I did that back in 2014. Forgot to take them. Never opened up the bottle again. Been fine ever since. Sure, you have your old ups and downs every now and again. That's what mental illness is for. It's good to keep yourself in check. But I'll tell you, man, you feel better. Meditate, man. It's good for you. Congratulations. Wild trees. I stopped talking to someone who was making me sad, and I explained it to them and was very respectful. Good for you. Sylvia, I wrote my will. Now there's no guessing. Bob, semi-retired, man. It's all that matters. Kim, drinking more water than coffee, drinking less caffeine, and opting for tea or herbal-type Thai cheese. Kevin, I stopped putting 2 S's in positive. Hey, about time, man. You finally red-penned yourself. Chuck, I spend 1 hour of technology-free time with my spouse and kids, sweat for 30 minutes a day, and communicate with another adult in the coaching world to continue to improve daily. Good for you, Chuck. Kate, I've set boundaries. Well, what kind of boundaries have you set, Kate? Now we're all curious. We're curious. Lori, deleting toxic people from my life. But if they are hurt in front of me, I will get them help, not a total B, you know. Greg, I started trading crypto. That's scary. Jim, just finished writing 2 new books over a 12-day period. One book is called The Shaman's Arrow and is a book on shamanism based on my hundreds of recorded dreams. The second is a trance-channeled, and I call it The Annals of Amon-Ra. It is a book of secrets of Amon-Ra. Joshua, hopefully a job change. Double Bobby, I now drink Coke instead of Pepsi. Daniel, me and my girlfriend became engaged. Congratulations, Daniel. That's awesome. Quincy, I stopped suppressing my interest in knowledge in the esoteric fields. I became what I am meant to be. I am an embodiment of my highest vision of myself. William gets the final word. I stopped drinking October of last year. Congratulations on that, William. That's an excellent, excellent thing to beat. Definitely. Thank you to everybody participating in the Thought of the Dave. We will do it all again very, very soon, so you sit tight and relate. We'll do it on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much to Captain Shirk for a wonderful SOR Newswire, and of course to our great guest tonight, Paul Anthony Wallis. His website, paulanthonywallis.com. Yes, what a great show. What a great show as we prepare to head on into the weekend here, and it is going to be absolutely fantastic. And I hope your area heats up. My area is starting to heat up. I hope yours does too, because you know what? This winter is starting to prolong itself a little too much, and we're only in mid-February. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone checking us out in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, LGAB, Spreaker, Revolution Radio, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. We're everywhere, people.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you for listening, my friends, because together, my friends,
We're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. Any of you want to bring a friend? We've got room for them too. See you next time. Good night. Hot damn, that was a fun show. Hot damn, hot damn, hot damn. There we go. Wrong mouse. So let's go to this one. I have 2 mouse in here. Not like real mouses, but like computer mouses. Yeah, I got 2. All right. Download that bad boy. I'll be right back. I gotta make a bathroom break. I'll be right back. Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio, 91 watching. Dave. Hey, Vanilla Fire. Vous l'avez bien? Oh no, I just connected. It's at the end. Don't worry, my friend. We'll be right back. All right. There we go. There we go. I'm back. How we all doing? We having a good night? I am doing good. Lexi, where are you from? You've never told us where we're from. Hey, Nimkish, how are you? Where are you from? Chris Mo, how about you? Where are you from? Oh. Let's just delete it. Okay, what happened to my screen here? Why did that just go all black? Good enough. Good enough. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Very cool. Burns Lake, that's nice area, Nimkish. And Crismo is 2 hours from Vienna in Austria. Very cool. Rafaela, where are you from? Hey, we don't have Austria on the map. Now we do. Justin's in Northwest Oregon. Grandmaster, how about you? Oh, yeah, Rafaela is from the Czech Republic. I ask her that every time, and every time I forget. What an idiot I am. Just an idiot. Oh. Grandmaster is our resident spy from D.C. At least we now know where he's from. All right. Go there. Where's the beginning here? I think this is the beginning here. I don't know what that is. Yeah, there's the beginning. Cashews from Colorado. Very nice. Very nice, Lexi. Gorgeous Larry is from Texas. Very good. Hope you're staying warm there, Gorgeous Larry. Do you have power? Princess Denali, how are you doing with the cold there? Are you staying warm? By the way, thank you, Fapster, for that great super chat. I really do appreciate that, man. Yeah, it was a good show. Thank you, Tammy. Steam Train Mark. I know you're from Australia. Oh, Fabster, thank you again, dude. Appreciate that. That's way too kind, bro. Way too kind. We love Grandma Rose around here. Give us a Grandma Rose update. How's Grandma Rose doing? What's the view of the night from my place? If it is clear, I see northwest or northeast to the east. It's really cool when the northern lights come out. I haven't seen them in a while, but it's pretty impressive. I don't get to see much because it's just sky, but literally there are thousands of stars out there, and it's just so impressive. It is really impressive, to be blunt and honest. Right there. Hold on, I'm just gonna check this. His book, The Escaping from Eden, was created by God or engineered by ETs. Oh yeah, that's why I butchered that one. John Swan, where are you from, man? Devin, how about you? Where are you from? John Swan's in New Jersey. And don't know where Devin is. Oh, cool. You're a West Coaster too, then. Where'd that go? Why is this going all black here? I don't. I haven't got it yet, Tammy. I will check. I was supposed to have today off, and I was supposed to have tomorrow off, but that has changed because my daytime jobs got a little busy, and I'm the only guy in my office that can do what I do. So when it gets busy, I gotta get those days off out of the way and get back in. So I will try and check tomorrow. But thank you. Who's on tomorrow night? I forget. Let me check here. Who is on tomorrow night? Oh, Chrissy Elliott tomorrow night. Chrissy Elliott. Very cool, Commonwealth Andrew. Very cool. I found that picture on Google. She's a journalist looking into UFOs, strange stuff, sex cults, Bigfoot. Yeah, we're getting into it all tomorrow. It's going to be cool. Commonwealth Andrew's sending me some photos here where he's looking pretty badass, man. Pretty badass, Commonwealth Andrew is. He might be a spy, too, to be honest. Wonder where Jock Itch is tonight. I think he's still in his safe room, recovering from the snarky bitch slapping we gave him last night. Just saying. Believe it or not, Corins, my one computer is needing an update right now. And after the show, when I signed off, I'm actually going to be sitting here and updating it. I mean, I just did a friggin' like this will be my third Microsoft update in what, 4 weeks? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh, Corns, last night, jock itch. You could tell he was just a young punk, probably in mid-teens, came in and tried to snark all of us last night. And the snark was just absolutely terrible. And so we just absolutely schooled him on, if you're going to come in here and try to snark us on stuff, at least bring some game. But honestly, it was terrible. It was terrible. Literally, we sent him like running home with his tail between his legs. Yeah, big fat creep. You didn't miss it. It was pretty bad snark. He was pretty lame, and literally, we just beat the crap out of him verbally. That could be it, Fapster. That could be it. Holy cow, we missed Geraldine Orozco's birthday. Oh my god, I feel horrible right now. Let's see if she's still awake. Let's see if Geraldine is still awake. We'll give her a call here. Geraldine. No, that's not her, Bay. Oh no, she's not on her computer. I'll have to message her. There, I messaged her. I feel good about that. All right, let's go like this. And that. And then we'll go like this. Geez, Geraldine already responded. Look at that. Vinster, you should go on her Facebook profile and wish her a happy birthday. Nick, you're probably right. I think he's up to about 1266 right now. Where'd Vinny go? Okay, there's 59 people watching, and there's only about 10 people in the chat room. Who are the rest of you? Who are the rest of you? Come into our chat room and say hello, please. Come on, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Corey doesn't bite. He may nibble, but he doesn't bite. Come on in. Let's see who some of you are who are listening right now. There's 59 of you. Come hang out. Come hang oot. Let's find some Canadian words. Canadian words. All right. Here's a few Canadian words for you that makes us unique. Hold on. A, as in EH. Loonie, as in our dollar, which is a coin with a loon on it. A toque, a.k.a. for you Americans, a beanie. We say washroom up here, not bathroom. A double-double. Do you know what a double-double is? It's a 2 cream, 2 sugar in your coffee. A 2-4. Do you know what a 2-4 is? A 2-4. It's 24 pack of beer. Molson muscle, otherwise known as a beer gut. Hydro. Do you know what hydro is? It's our electric company. Knapsack, which is the exact same as a backpack. You guys use candy bar. We call it chocolate bars. A Chinook, not a military helicopter, but actually a very strong wind variant. About, not a boot. About. Z, not Z. Well, there you go. Here's your Canadian lesson for the day. Salmon, not salmon. Chesterfield instead of couch. Spring salmon instead of king salmon. Put these in here. Close that out. I wonder where my background went. Literally, my background disappeared. What photo did I have there? I had, where are you? Where are you? Let's put up Dirty Filths. Set as background. There we go. Oh, that's way too bright. Way too bright. Looks good, though. We'll keep that for a bit. I'll get used to it with my eyes. Dirty Filth, your picture of my round table with Science Bob, Sean Cahill, Barking Dog, Grant Cameron, and Nicole is now my background on my computer. What the hell is poutine? One of the greatest things that has ever been made. It is French fries with cheese curds coated with thick gravy. It's a beautiful thing. Excuse me. You're a sick man, Fapster, and that doesn't surprise me. Poutine is not like deep fried butter in the South. I could never imagine eating deep fried butter. Really? People do that? Oh, it is a heart attack express, yes, but it is lovely. I usually fall asleep to listening to your voice. It's soothing. Thank you. It's my job to put you to sleep. Super Ron agrees with you. Actually, a nice compliment. I appreciate that. Dave, do you think we will have any revelations or big news coming up in the UFO world? No. No, not yet. Not yet. COVID's still taking over everything, so they want to make sure that they have it in a big bang for it. But you never know, something may pop up. You never know. You never know. Tomorrow night, Chrissy Elliott will be with us. This is the show where we had the audio problems and I had to cancel her. I don't know. Just the cheese curds that go on the poutine. It's pop, not soda. Pop, not soda. Yes, I was reading that, John. I don't know how much pull it'll have, but yeah, I will, Corey. I shall message him right now. Okay, Corey, I messaged him. All right, tomorrow night on the show, Chrissy Elliott will be with us. And I want to say a big thank you to Fapster, Dr. Marty, Kira, Truth or Consequences, Sig Sauer, Howard, Chris Reap, Human Carl, and Cat Chaser for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate the love that you show for this show and myself every night. I'm going to cut out of here because I do have to work tomorrow. And it's always a pleasure to broadcast to you guys. I have so much fun. And thank you for being here for us. We really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome. We'll do it all again tomorrow, and we'll sing into the weekend. How about that? Take care. See you tomorrow night.